Happy Thursday, sports fans. It is three-man front here on Jock 94.5. Landrum, Pat, Molly, Conrad here with you for the next 4 hours as we get ready for football tonight. We got the NFL on Jocks. We got college football last night and tonight. Speaking of last night, Pat, how about Brian Edwards? How about you? Jacksonville State taking care of business. Good teams, great teams. They cover, and that is what we saw last night, Patrick Smith.
I will be honest with you. I got a little bit concerned when they had like first and goal inside the 10 in the second half, and there was a fumble and Middle Tennessee State recovered. I started going, oh no, here we go. But it's a long game, and so I was patient, and just like Brian Edwards, he and I were texting last night with each other because we were kind of sweating it out a little bit there in the second half, but it was well in hand as Jacksonville State gets the big win, 42-20, as you mentioned. They covered.
So you're saying that there will still be Christmas at the Smith household?
At least for, what time do games kick off tonight?
At least for Leanne. The boys are still holding out, and there's still a lot of football left to be played, right?
Well, we got games tonight, starting at 6 o'clock.
We do have games tonight.
Yeah, so it depends on what happens tonight. See what kind of Christmas everybody has. No, but it was, hey, listen, one thing's for sure. Jacksonville State, and we mentioned this yesterday, Bill Clark, who lives in that neck of the woods, that's his alma mater. He coached there. He goes by and sees Rich Rodriguez on occasion. And he told me and you a couple weeks ago that they have got this thing turned around. And just the way they run the football, Landrum, it is just very impressive. They had 438 yards of rushing offense last night, 575 yards total, but just very impressive the way they run the ball against no matter who the opponent is.
Well, the reason that you either love college football, you hate college football, is the other game that we got last night as a 26-point road favorite. Liberty and the Flames go down to Kennesaw State. You can make the argument the worst team in the FBS heading into this week, and the Owls get it done. They pick up their first win of the season, an anemic offense prior to this week, but they knock off Liberty 27-24. Wow, that was something else. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
No, did any of you guys play that game?
No.
In Office Football Pool?
No. But, and I told you, one of these touts, it's nobody that we have here. It's a text thread that I'm on with some friends outside of the station. I don't ever use these guys' picks. And this guy, he'll give you NHL, and he comes with a video, and he'll text it. And last night, his pick was Liberty, lay in the points. And I knew this guy, he should. I hope that he doesn't have a family that he has to support with these picks, because his picks are generally terrible, and I'll go the other direction. But, yeah, that was his pick last night, Liberty.
Well, they started a football program at Kennesaw State back in 2015. So they get their first ever win against an FBS opponent last night. They were a 4-touchdown underdog, as you mentioned. They knock off Liberty. And listen, Liberty was one of those teams, Molly, in your bowl projections, not saying you had Liberty in there, but that's one of those teams that as a group of 5, a lot of people thought, you know what, if Liberty runs the table, they could be in a conversation, and that went out the window last night.
Yeah, they were definitely eyeing for that group of 5 spot, the 12 seed or the 11 seed, depending on where they're put. But, Pat, I would agree. They can probably kiss that goodbye. I think I had them in my projection maybe the first week, but I think I put UNLV in there 1 week, and since I've had Boise. Yeah. That's just my take, though.
Yeah. Well, Caden Salter, Landrum, he threw for 206 yards and 3 touchdowns against that Kennesaw State defense. That was very odd, but that's the first time in 23 years a team that was 0-5 defeated a team that was 5-0 or better. Isn't that crazy? 23 years since that happened last. It was just a wild night there in Georgia.
That is nuts. Yeah. College football. That's what makes it so much fun. We do have games coming up tonight. We got a pretty good game. We got Pitt, who has been a cover machine so far this year, undefeated, hosting a Syracuse team that has surprised some people at 5-1. That game's 6:30. We're going to get tonight. Pitt at home, Acrisure Stadium. The last line I saw was the Panthers -6. You going to play this one, Patrick?
Pitt is now -5.5. It is going the other direction. I checked that earlier this morning. According to ESPN Analytics, they've got Pitt winning by 7.4 points. But think about Eli Holstein, the Alabama transfer, Conrad. Here's a guy that's taken his opportunity. He's gone to Pitt. He's played really well. And when you're mentioned with the likes of Dan Marino, because he's the first Pitt quarterback to win his first 6 starts since Dan Marino in 1979 and 1980, that is crazy to think that he's been able to go up there and perform as well as he has.
Yeah, I mean, he's been excellent for them. He's sitting about 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions on the year so far, and he's been such a big part of this Pitt team and the early success that they've had here in this season. And now you're going up against a really, really good Syracuse team. I've been so impressed with Syracuse, and they have their own guy in Kyle McCord, who maybe a little bit of Heisman buzz for what he's been able to do at Syracuse, but again, like a guy that was essentially casted off from the island of the Ohio State football program, and now he's gone to Syracuse, and you go, oh, that doesn't really move the needle as much, and now you see what he's been able to do for the Orange. It's been spectacular. So it should be a great game tonight, and yeah, I'll be pulling for Pitt and my guy Eli Holstein to keep having success there. So that's because he's one of the guys that you look at and you go, don't really blame him for leaving Alabama, and so to see him have this much success immediately is very happy for him.
Well, let's talk about Kyle McCord for a second. And I'm like you, when he decided to go to Syracuse, I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. Didn't really think much of it. But you got to give him credit. I mean, he has had 6 straight games with 300-plus passing yards. I mean, that's very impressive. And the fact that Syracuse has jumped out to this great start in this season, Landrum, you got to give them credit, because many teams or many people didn't think that Syracuse would be in a conversation at the top part of the ACC this early, or this midway part of the season in the ACC schedule.
No, you're exactly right. And for them to do what they've done, and doesn't that just go to show, though, if you are able to get a competent quarterback in there that is surrounded by just a few pieces, and you have enough of those guys around him, you can win some football games in college football these days, just based on personnel and what everybody else has. And it seems like it's working out for some teams, and some teams, they continue to beat their heads against a concrete wall thinking we can win with this guy.
Well, because there's a lot of people out there that are probably going, man, maybe we should have taken a little closer look at Kyle McCord. But he's playing better at Syracuse than he was at Ohio State with all of that talent around him. Some things it's super impressive, but that's how it is in college football, right? You can't really pinpoint how things are going to go.
No. There is one more game tonight that will pale in comparison, because that's going to be your ACC game. But the other game that we have...
Oh, you're playing Old Dominion, aren't you?
I am not going to play Old Dominion. This Georgia Southern team, I love them when they're in Statesboro. But they are quietly going 5-2. And I say quietly because look at who they've lost to. You've lost to Ole Miss and you've lost to Boise. But look at the teams that you've beaten. You beat Marshall. You were dead and buried in that game, and you were able to come back and get a close win. You doubled up James Madison, who is not a bad football team. This is a team, and you say, well, do they have road struggles? Can they play away from Statesboro? I think they can. They've already done it against Georgia State this year. I like Georgia Southern tonight on the road. Just me personally, I'm going to take Georgia Southern.
Okay. Is that OFP or is that LV? What are you doing?
That will be both.
Ooh.
Wow.
Is this your lock of the year?
No.
Oh.
It's my lock of the first segment of this show.
Oh, you're going to have a lock every segment of the show?
No.
That'll be fun.
I was just trying to minimize the importance and the units that people, if they are going to play that game, should put on it.
Can't wait to hear your next 15 locks today, Landry. I'm looking forward to it.
That's going to be fantastic.
A lot of NBA.
Well, I am technically 1-1 in the OFP this week.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What about LV?
I'm ahead, actually, this week in
Okay.
LV.
Good.
So maybe I should have listened to LV for my OFP.
You know me.
Yeah. Speaking of the ACC, so just, listen, you respect the fact that he made a decision and he's not going to do it anymore, but North Carolina State quarterback Grayson McCall, he's been out since suffering a concussion earlier this month. He has announced his retirement. He went on social media and said, brain specialist, my family and I have come to the conclusion that it's in my best interest to hang the cleats up. So Grayson McCall, he was one of college football's most productive quarterbacks while he played at Coastal Carolina. He threw for over 10,000 yards, 88 touchdowns in 5 seasons. And he said, you know what? Enough's enough. I'm not going to risk it. This is a college game. Probably didn't see himself going on and potentially playing in the professional football ranks. So he made the decision with his family. He is hanging it up. No more for Grayson McCall.
Yeah, he was such a fun story, and what they did with Jamie Chadwell there at Coastal, and that offense, as unique as it was, but it was so much fun to watch in the midweek, and that's when we got a lot of Coastal and kind of them emerging as one of the teams that we fell in love with, especially during the pandemic when we got the matchup with BYU and all of that. But yeah, Grayson McCall, you hate to see it, but you are also comforted in knowing that he's still a young man. He's got a lot of life, hopefully, out in front of him. And he's making this decision with medical experts and his family and taking his health and putting that first before a game that he loves so much in college football.
And a quarterback, Conrad, that was rumored to potentially be in the mix to go to Auburn.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there was something with his grades, and I don't know if it was a transfer of credits or whatever it was, but there was something on the academic side that prevented him from ultimately coming to Auburn 2 years ago, I believe it was. So yeah, it would have been interesting to see how a guy like that translated, especially in Hugh Freeze's offense, because he was, as y'all have said, one of the more productive quarterbacks in college football for about 3 or 4 years there at Coastal Carolina. So it's, one of those, what could have been type situations, but ultimately for him, glad that he was able to, make the decision that's right for him and his future. And, as we know how serious these injuries have gotten and how much awareness is out about, concussions and head injuries in football. And, it's sad to see his season go the way that it had before the injury. And now for him to have to call it a career is sad. But.
So this stat, as I'm looking at his career passing, 10,523 yards, 91 passing touchdowns, just 16 interceptions, almost 70% completion percentage for Grayson McCall. And that doesn't count the 1,100 yards that he racked up on the ground.
He's pretty good.
To add 18 touchdowns. Heck of a career for that guy.
There's no doubt, but obviously him and his family made the right decision with him having a couple of concussions, I believe, this season, and then he's had some in the past, so he made the decision last night to call it quits for the Wolfpack in his career. Conrad, did you send a cake to Kalen DeBoer today? Yes or no?
No, I unfortunately I did not. I sent him a letter in the mail, or a card. Well, it was more of a card. But I don't know if he got it today. Maybe he got a little early birthday wish. But yeah, happy 50th birthday to Kalen DeBoer.
You think he gets a collared shirt, Molly?
I hope so.
For his birthday?
I hope he gets a collection of them.
Collection of collared shirts, golf polos that he can wear in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
If he was undefeated right now and coming off a big win against Tennessee, I think that mailbox in Tuscaloosa would be absolutely just jam-packed. I mean, it would look like Christmas morning, all the kind of letters and presents that would be
cigars, whiskey.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how many
shares.
He's getting these days with 2 losses. Just not sure. I saw an interesting shirt, what LANK stands for now. Don't know if you've seen that on social media.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty interesting.
Maybe Josh Heupel sent him a birthday cake or something.
Possibly so. He turns 50 years old today. He got a cake at his radio show last night. And speaking of his radio show, he was talking about how the team is tightening up the details. He said, "We sweat the small stuff. Whatever you've heard this week, it's not so much different than it has been all the time." I thought that was interesting, Landrum, how he pointed that out. So for folks who want to talk about how it's a little bit more buttoned up, he kind of basically is coming out and saying that no matter what you're hearing, it's been buttoned up basically all season long. So
he's having to defend the way that he runs the program based on having 2 losses so far in the season.
He says, whatever you've heard about this week, it's not so much different than it has been all the time. It's a direct quote.
I don't know what's more concerning, the possibility that stuff wasn't emphasized as much as it should have been until now, or the fact that it has been, according to Kalen DeBoer, and they still have the problems that they do.
By the way, if Josh Heupel has not sent Kalen DeBoer a birthday gift, the perfect birthday gift would be noise-canceling headphones.
I like that.
That would be good, or one of those obnoxious cards that you open up and all you have is like a crowd noise. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That would be good. DeBoer also went on during his radio show and said penalties are a lack of discipline. That's a news flash. Sometimes there's just some interesting things that happen to keep you from getting to where you want to be. things that you can't control. Well, you can control penalties. You can't control not slapping a defensive back, with under 2 minutes to go in a football game. I'm just saying. Also, Ryan Williams was a guest on the show. And Conrad, you pointed this out yesterday. He's been wearing orange nail polish. And he was asked about that last night during the Kalen DeBoer show. And Ryan Williams said about his nails, starting my sophomore year of high school, my little sister, she decided that she really likes doing nails. And at first she started with my mom and she wanted to try on me. So I was just like, hey, I'm comfortable in my own skin. So it really didn't bother me. End of quote.
Yeah, see, because I remember, this was a big thing with Caleb Williams last year, right? Of, do you really want to draft a quarterback who paints his nails, whatever? Look, he has shared that story. Ryan Williams has shared that story about his sister before. Look, I think it's sweet. I understand people were mad because they were orange fingernails, and he said that even a couple players on the team were kind of asking him about it, and that's just the color that his sister wanted to paint his nails that day, and so he let her do it. And I get it. There's people out there that are going to feel a certain type of way about that, but again, doesn't have any impact on anything that goes onto a football field, and if that's how he connects with his sister, then more power to you.
Does he have a little dazzle, like on one of the nails, like the offset, like the little glue-on rhinestones or whatever they do?
I think they're just plain.
Oh.
Just plain orange.
Yeah.
I'd dazzle them up a little bit.
But see, in this day and age of NIL and people worried about transfer portal, like when you see an Alabama football player wearing, whether it's Tennessee orange or burnt orange on your fingernails, would that not concern some people?
Yes, I understand how it looks. I totally get that.
Okay.
But again, I just filed that away into the folder that we have now created of stuff that doesn't impact how you play on the
So
football.
How many Alabama fans do you think reading that this is subliminal and this is him telling us that he's either going to go to Tennessee or Texas next year?
Well, according to him, his second option was actually Texas A&M. So now if he starts wearing maroon fingernail polish, then...
Or if he shows up to one of his press conferences and he's wearing like a white overalls, then you might be getting concerned.
Or if he's drinking milk, because that means the Merry Milkmen got to him. Yes. There's no coming back from that.
Or doing choreography to Taylor Swift and putting it out there on social media.
That's right.
That's problematic.
Well, if you're like Kalen DeBoer and your birthday is today, maybe something that you would like is one of the wonderful offerings from Twin Peaks in Hoover, because all throughout this month of October, they are offering their exclusive and extensive collection of incredibly rare bourbons, whiskeys, and tequilas that I know people are such a big fan of. They also have their barrel selects that are hand-selected by the team there in Hoover specifically for you. So if you find yourself, call yourself a bourbon connoisseur, do yourself a favor, get into Twin Peaks in Hoover all throughout the month of October to see what they can pour up for you. They also sponsor our daily three-man front Twitter poll question of the day. Molly, and what is today's question?
Which SEC player will finish the highest in the Heisman race? Will it be Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, Carson Beck from Georgia, or Jalen Milroe from Alabama? And right now winning with 46.4% is Carson Beck. Garrett Nussmeier is in second with 20. Jalen Milroe is in third with 19.6. And Dylan Sampson is in last with 14.
Landrum, what's so interesting about that poll is because a lot of the straw polls right now in regards to the Heisman race, there is not an SEC player in the top 5 of any poll anywhere. And I don't know if I can recall that ever being a situation before.
I'm racking my brain right now. Maybe I'm trying to remember the year that RG3 won it.
Yeah.
All the Heisman years kind of run together, but it seems like maybe we didn't have as much SEC representation. But of late, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, because right now, most people have Genty, Ward, Hunter, Gabriel, and matter of fact, Rourke is now getting some buzz from Indiana. So those 5 guys are dominating all these straw polls that's going on, and you look at Vegas odds and things of that nature. So I think our audience, based on their voting today, I think as of right now, I voted Carson Beck myself. I don't know how you guys voted, but I would think that right now that would probably be the person most likely to represent the SEC in New York, maybe.
Yeah, well, we'll see if LSU beats Alabama in a couple weeks. I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to skyrocket up some of those.
Right
lists.
now, if I was going to play a game and all things being equal, except pick your own quarterback, I would go with Nussmeier over Carson Beck.
Yes, I agree with that. But
Okay.
Carson Beck plays on what we presume is going to be, I guess, probably the number 1, 2, 3 team in the country.
And that shouldn't. Well, I guess it should or shouldn't make a difference. Depends on how you look at it. But it has made a difference.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. All right, coming up on three-man front, the injury reports, or the availability reports, I should say, came out last night at 7 o'clock, and a couple of big names on the Mizzou list that we told you yesterday. Some reports were coming out of Columbia that they would not be available. One report out of Missouri is basically saying, hold up, one of these guys may give it a go on Saturday. We'll tell you who it is and what to expect of those availability reports when we come back. It's the Thursday edition of Three-Man Front right here on Jocks 94.5. It is 10:24 here on Jocks 94.5 on this Thursday. Coming up at the top of the hour, Rodney Orr will join us from Tider Insider. Rob Pate from our Auburn DB, he's going to join us at 11:45. And then the 12 o'clock hour, it's the Hour of Brett's. That's right. Brett McMurphy, the Action Network at noon. Brett Norsworthy, the Southern Gentleman, he will join us from WHBQ Radio in Memphis at 12:30.
Well, as we move further away from the hot weather, you know your HVAC system worked overtime this summer, so make sure you're prepared for the months and years ahead with a Trane comfort system. Right now, Trane's Unstoppable event offers you peace of mind with a 10-year warranty on parts and labor with select Trane home comfort systems. To learn more, go and visit Trane.com.
So yesterday, we got a couple of initial reports coming out of the state of Missouri via Pete Thamel from ESPN saying that Brady Cook has had a tough week, has not been able to do much at practice, and they did not expect him to be able to participate against Alabama. Meanwhile, Nate Noel, one of their top running backs, he was listed by ESPN and Pete Thamel that he would not be available to play this weekend against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Noel is averaging 5.9 yards per carry. And then a funny thing happened, Landrum. The availability report comes out last night, and both Noel and Brady Cook, they're listed as doubtful on the availability report. But Power Mizzou, they used to be a rival site. They're now part of the 247 network. They're reporting not so fast on Noel, that they believe that Noel will be a game-time decision. So the initial report that came out yesterday by Pete Thamel saying that he would not be available, that, again, he may not play, but Power Mizzou website, they're saying their sources are telling them that Noel is much farther along than Brady Cook, and he could potentially give that a go. With all that being said, Landrum, the line went from 13.5 yesterday when we signed off to it's 17 now, as Alabama has jumped up big time in the Vegas lines.
I didn't like this matchup with Missouri and Alabama when they had all hands on deck. And this Missouri team, they need every bit of that. They absolutely have to have Brady Cook, as evidenced last week. But even a partial or an 80% Nate Noel, I hate the matchup there in Tuscaloosa. So I think, fortunately for Alabama, you got Brady Cook. He's banged up, and that offense goes with him. And it hasn't been as prolific as it was last year when he was healthy. So I think Alabama can figure out a Luther Burden and what they're going to try to do with him. And I think the Alabama Crimson Tide fans can rest easy.
But wouldn't it be kind of funny, though, if, well, it wouldn't be funny for me, but a backup Notre Dame quarterback in the SEC, the Tyler Buckner connection from last year, now Drew Pine at Missouri, and you lose to that guy?
And I was reading some stuff on Pine.
Nothing funny about that at all.
No, it's not, but it would be ironic, I guess.
So Pine, when it's all said and done, because of the COVID year, he's had some red shirts, he's been injured. He could play 7 years of college football. That's right, 7 years. He was at Arizona State last season. He started the season as a Sun Devils backup before taking over for Jaden Rashada in the third game of the season. Pine played in 2 games and did not appear again after week 4. He completed 26 of 49 passes for 273 yards. He tossed 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions at Arizona State. The quarterback, prior to his stop in Tempe, he spent 3 seasons at Notre Dame. He was the Irish starter for 10 games in the 2022 season. He threw for 2,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 picks. So, I mean, he had good numbers that year. But this right now, Landrum, is his 5th year of playing college football. 5th year.
I love it.
So he had the extra year because of COVID. He had to redshirt because he got injured. And so now he's got 2 more years of eligibility, which would make him 7 total years of playing college football.
I just, I don't know why, but now that I've been out of college for quite some time, and I told you about the reoccurring dream that I've had where I still have 6 hours left, and I'm going to space them out, and I'm going to stay down there and milk it as long as I can. These guys that are doing this, I don't fault them at all. Why be in a hurry? College football, the experience, being around teammates, getting to see cool places, that's awesome. So for him, I would encourage him.
Quarterback?
Yeah, go 7 years, go 7 seasons. Think about all of those life lessons you're going to get, and why be in a hurry to get out into a work force or place where job placement is not great right now.
So how does that make you feel, Molly? Because I believe you guys were born in the same year.
Yeah, we were. I will say Cam Rising is older than me, but me and Drew Pine are the same age.
And just think, Conrad, Brandon Whedon, when he played at Oklahoma State, he was older than what you are right now.
I was about to say, and I think their quarterback now, Bowman, he's about my age. He's been there for 7 or 8 years himself. So it's, Yeah, these things just happen sometimes. I mean, good for them. I mean, there's the tight end at Miami. He's in his 8th year, I think, something like that. So
I'm trying to think, is
more
there
power to him.
anything advantageous to have a teammate that's that old? Because you got guys that are 21.
I was about to say, it's not like you're worried about getting beer or something.
No.
I
Just
don't
wondering,
know.
is that
But you're not going to class. I mean, I imagine he's probably not going. Maybe he's getting his master's.
you're doing
I don't-
online stuff?
I guess, yeah.
You actually physically going into a classroom.
Oh, God, no.
But maybe you are. I mean, let's think about it. For the social interaction,
Well,
shall
yeah,
we
of
say.
course. I'm sure that's not a problem.
And you're a quarterback.
I mean, I
Doesn't matter
understand
you
if
wanna play.
if Pine would have stayed in Tempe and gone 7 years.
Well, yeah, you just hang out in the lazy river all day.
Yeah.
I saw a live shot from there this morning on network news. Somebody was doing a live shot from Tempe, and I thought about
beautiful.
Pat.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the lazy river.
No, nobody was
I
in
was
the
like,
lazy.
wow.
Somebody probably just got out of the lazy river at like 4
Hey,
a.m.
Landrum, there are certain cameras. I'll send you the link that you can watch the lazy river.
Do not send it to my phone, Pat.
Oh,
What is that? Don't worry, babe. Go back to sleep. Pat
Yeah.
just sent me a text.
Yeah, don't worry about it. All right, so if you're seeing warning signs, if you're a homeowner, windows or doors that stick, cracks in the brick or the block, linear or those bowing walls in your basement, settling or sinking, how much time before that minor repair can become serious structural damage? You can't afford to wait. Call APS today for a free estimate. 205-951-9717. Foundation problems don't get better with time. They get better when you call APS. 205-951-9717 or visit their website at alabamaprofessional.com.
Well, we do have Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, coming up at 11 o'clock. His customary spot, Rob Pate, talking Auburn, Kentucky at 11:45. As Pat mentioned, the hour of Brett's. Brett McMurphy, the Action Network at noon. The Southern Gentleman, Brett Norsworthy at 12:30. Loaded up Thursday. Glad you're with us. 3-man front and Jocks, 94.5.
It is 10:34 here on Jocks 94.5. Rodney Orr, top of the hour. Rob Pate, also next hour. We've got NFL tonight. That's right. Minnesota, a 3-point favorite. They'll be taking on the Los Angeles Rams out in sunny California. Rams receiver Cooper Kupp, he'll suit it up for the first time since he hurt his ankle in week 2. He was involved in a lot of trade rumors this week, but nothing materialized. Likewise, the Vikings could have tight end TJ Hockenson back for the first time this season after he suffered a torn ACL and MCL in his right knee last December. And did you guys see on the sideline who's at Green Bay Packers practice yesterday? Was that not odd? Robert Saleh was standing on the sideline, and the Green Bay Packers say that it's a fluid role that he is going to have with the team moving forward. Matt LaFleur said yesterday, while noting Saleh has not been officially hired in any capacity with the Packers, Saleh and LaFleur go way back in their days at Central Michigan. They were roommates back in the day at Central Michigan. So
just talk about a big old middle finger to Aaron Rodgers.
Well,
right?
that's what I was going to say. Aaron Saleh going and saying, yep, you guys were right. He is absolutely impossible to deal with.
I would love to know what their conversation was like, him and LaFleur of just, God, how did you deal with him, man? Like, to be a fly on the wall.
Yep.
I mean, the only thing that would have been better if Green Bay and the Jets played this year, but they don't.
No.
Maybe in the Super Bowl, Pat. You never know.
Oh, well, like I will remain with the statement I had previously where they will not be playing this year.
Well, when it comes to your technology, don't settle for anything less than a winning team. How about Evolve IT, your trusted local IT partner? At Evolve IT, they're your MVPs for all things tech, like network management, cybersecurity, and keeping your business systems running smoothly. No fumbles, no downtime, just expert support. Right here in Birmingham, 365, 24/7. You're not going to get a national call center. You're not going to be waiting for a correspondence email. You call them when your system goes down. You got someone right here in Birmingham to call you right back and take care of your issue. Evolve IT, they're ready to take your tech game to the next level. Online at evolvebhm.com. That's evolvebhm.com. Or call right now, 205-749-8970, Evolve IT.
So to me, and you guys correct me if you think I'm wrong here, to me it seems like momentum is building that Auburn is going to get their first SEC win this weekend. That
was me. That was a sigh and almost just a guffaw.
No, I'm not being a smart aleck here. I mean, I firmly believe that. I mean, look, if you do a dive on some of this information, the good news, and by the way, tune in tonight at 6 o'clock. Bill Clark has a great breakdown of what he is seeing with this Auburn Tiger football team. 6 o'clock tonight on Jocks 94.5. You can also watch it on the Jocks YouTube page.
Yes.
But he was talking about how they have cleaned everything up from a turnover standpoint, and they're still doing some really, really good things. It just has not bounced their way. And when you look at this matchup, Landrum, the Wildcats are last in the league in scoring offense. They're only averaging 20 points a game. UK is next to last in total offense, passing offense, and team passing efficiency is 123 yards per game and fourth in completion percentage. That means they're not going to be putting up a lot of points in this game. The Wildcats have totaled 6 offensive touchdowns in 5 SEC games. And it goes without saying, Aaron Gershon told us yesterday about how poor Vandergriff has played this year. Only 1,100 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. I like Auburn in this role. I really do. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. And everything that you mentioned would tell us that Auburn should probably finally get an SEC win. But until I see it from Hugh Freeze, and it's not all him, but ultimately it is him, and the players finish a fourth quarter when you got a chance to put the game away. I've been fooled too many times this year. And Hugh Freeze and what he said in the teleconference was absolutely correct. They have been close in these games. They have been competitive. You can't convince me that, well, if they just had a little bit more talent. No, they have enough talent right now to be a 5-2 football team. They have enough talent, if you look at it and you want to really paint a rosy picture, to be a 6-1 football team. This is going to be a defense that comes back home. Mark Stoops, he's going to have a plan to try to limit whatever Auburn has been able to be successful at on that side of the ball. I just special teams. We know that they got Barian Brown. He is a threat at any point to take it the distance. I will fade the Tigers until I see otherwise. I do think that this is a crossroads game, though, for them emotionally. While they haven't shown any signs of checking out, if you can win this game, then you get back home to Jordan Hare and you're inspired with Vanderbilt, La Monroe, Texas A&M before the road trip to Tuscaloosa. If not, I just don't see how you don't have guys starting to question not only themselves, each other, but the coaching staff.
Well, and here's my problem for Auburn going into this weekend is, Pat, you brought it up with the Kentucky offense is if you're Auburn, you're probably sitting here going, man, if we put up 24, you're probably going to win this football game. Okay, you've only done that twice this year if you're Auburn, and it's in the 2 games that you've won, right? And we've gone up against, you look at the Oklahoma game, not a great offense, good defense, but not a great offense. You're only able to score 14. You only get 17 last week against Missouri. That's where my concern is when you look at it statistically, it's, man, this Kentucky offense isn't very good, and Auburn has shown an ability to move the ball, but you got to put points on the board at the end of the day too. And so, if you're telling me that only 2 out of the 7 games they played this year, they've gotten to that 24 or higher mark, that gives me some concern about this game because Kentucky's defense is very, very good.
You look at Jarquez Hunter, that is the straw that stirs the drink for Auburn's offense, in my opinion. He ranks among the top 6 in the SEC in multiple rushing categories, including yards per game, yards per carry. He's averaging 6 yards per carry. Just feed him. Just let him go. Now, Kentucky's got a very good defensive front. We have seen that multiple times this year, especially against Georgia and what they did against Jackson Dart and that Ole Miss offense in Oxford. Auburn ranks 2nd in the SEC in yards per play. That's what's so crazy, Landrum, is because statistically speaking, this Auburn offense is putting up some really good numbers. They should not be sitting here at 2-5, 0-4 in the SEC.
No, you're right, and this is a stat that is getting a lot of traction, and it was among Auburn fans. I know that we've shared it on the text thread, but it was put out that 27 FBS offenses average at least 6.5 yards per play this season. 29 FBS defenses allow 5 yards per play or less this season. Only 7 FBS teams are doing both. Those teams: Army, Indiana, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Penn State, Texas, and Auburn. That's crazy. One of these is not like the other.
No.
They're that good on both sides of the ball. The other, outside of Auburn, who is now 2-5 on the season, those other teams are, I think I saw, was 36-4?
Yes.
That's correct.
Combined record. Is that not mind-blowing, Pat?
No, it's crazy. But because of that stat, the one that's going to offset it, and most Auburn fans, they know this, I don't have to tell them, but Auburn is 2nd worst in turnover margin at -10. And because of all of those turnovers has put you behind the sticks, it's put you behind the scoreboard, and they just have not been able to get anything going traction-wise to get a winning streak together. Now, one thing about Kentucky and Auburn they do have in common is their inefficiency in scoring in the red zone. Aaron Gershon yesterday from the Cat's Paws, he was telling us about how good Kentucky is, between the 20s. From 120 to the next 20, they're really good. But right now, scoring in the red zone, tied at 99th in the country, both Auburn and Kentucky, they score just 55% of the time in the red zone. Even worse for Auburn, only 80% of the time do they score any points. Now let that sink in. You get in the red zone, and only 80% of the time are you putting up a field goal or scoring a touchdown. That is crazy compared to Kentucky's 85%. So both teams, if you get in the red zone, and I think that was another reason why Auburn's making that change at place kicking, is because how many short 3-point shots did they have in a football game, and Auburn has been unable to take those points when they're available. So they really need to improve that red zone percentage of more than 80%.
Yeah, needless to say, they do. Some of it has been questionable play calling, but also for Auburn, I go back to, it was a pivotal point in the game at Missouri. And if you'll remember, it was when Missouri kind of sold out and Auburn was there in the red zone. Peyton Thorne, he's immediately staring at the guys that are about to kill him. and he's retreating, he doesn't look off to his left where he's got I don't even call him peeling, whatever, Jarquez Hunter out in the flat. He throws it to him. There's a good chance they score a touchdown. Instead, he takes a big loss, and I think that led to the missed field goal attempt that we eventually got on that. Just those small plays. They have plagued Auburn all season long situationally and affected the outcomes of games. So, yeah, if they can somehow find a way to get it turned around. But we know that if there's a strength of this Kentucky team and the pedigree of one Mark Stoops, it's the defensive side of the ball.
Well, you're right. And that's going to be obviously the biggest matchup because rushing offense, Auburn is 72nd in the country in that category, about 158 yards per game. Meanwhile, Kentucky, they are 22nd in rushing defense. They're only giving up right at 100 yards per game rushing. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of pressure they put on Peyton Thorne and if the Auburn running game can get going. So it's still a 2.5-point spread right now. Kentucky with the short favor there from the Las Vegas odds. I was reading Auburn Undercover this morning, our friends down there with Clemente, Caldwell, and Nathan King. You add up all of their scores, their predictions for the game, they've got Auburn winning 20-18. So not only covering the spread, but Auburn getting their first SEC win.
Is that a scoregami, Molly?
2018?
Ooh, I can check.
20-18?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I feel like I've heard that before.
Maybe it was just because
I just said it.
Well, and Pat said it, and 6 years ago,
I
it
mean,
was
it's
the year
a very
2018.
score, but
Oh, yeah. Illinois, Penn State was 20-18 3 years ago. I was like, I've definitely heard that before.
Well, that's a Big Ten. You get weird
Yeah,
scores.
of course. That was the 9 overtime game.
So when was the last time
and
it
it was
happened in the
20 to
SEC?
18.
Yeah.
Molly?
Oh,
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Pat?
Molly,
Oh,
that's
do you have?
How is that?
Can you look to see when the last happened in the SEC? A score of 20-18?
I can check.
And that's taking the average. I mean, because like for instance, Jason Caldwell's got Auburn 20-17. Nathan King's got Kentucky winning 17-14. Christian Clemente went 9-7 Kentucky.
Ew.
I know when I saw that, I was like, oh wow.
And hey, this is how it will play out. Auburn will first drive will go down and score, and they'll be up 7-0.
Yeah.
And then they'll get shut out the rest of the game, and it'll be Kentucky kicking 3 field goals.
No, kicking 3 field goals in the fourth quarter.
well, I was about
In the
to
fourth
say,
quarter.
at least one of those is a game winner.
One
as
is a
time
walk
expires.
off.
Yeah.
One is a walk off, and they storm Kroger Field.
Yeah. Wow.
If you say it, it
Unbelievable.
won't happen. So I'm doing you a favor, Auburn fans.
Yeah. So I'm just curious if when the last time that happened in the SEC, Molly, if you can find it. You
I'm
might not
working
be
on
able
my
to find
research right now.
it. Okay.
I'll be able to find
All right.
it. But yeah, I just remember 2018, that was the 9 overtime game.
Ugh.
But it's like Landrum said, that's a Big Ten score
Right.
like, written all over it.
It is.
But
And at times they've looked like some bad Big Ten teams.
yes, very much so. When we come back on Three Man Front, more news and notes around college football. This is Three Man Front on a very active Thursday. This is Jocks 94.5. It is 10:51, Jocks 94.5 on this Thursday. Rodney Orr will join us at the top of the hour. Also, Rob Pate next hour. And the Hour of Brett's began at 12 noon. Brett McMurphy from the Action Network and Brett Noiseworthy will join us in the 12 o'clock hour. Last night, Kennesaw State, they shocked the college football world. They get their first FBS win in history of the program. They knock off undefeated Liberty 27-24. How about some of these streaks that came to an end last night as Liberty goes down to defeat? They had defeated 20 straight Conference USA teams. That's out the window. They had won 17 straight in the regular season, gone. 11 straight in the month of October, also finished. And 5 straight overall. So, boom, out the door, Liberty and their hopes of making the college football playoff is done. Meanwhile, Jacksonville State, big win last night, 42-20. I do want to pass this along because I bragged about him yesterday. Amari Kelly, the former Hewitt Trustful wide receiver, he came into the game 12th in all of college football in yards receiving per game. Guess what? He improved on that last night. He had 128 yards receiving on 8 catches last night against the Gamecocks. So he's now up to 759 yards on the season. So it's good to see a local product, Amari Kelly, who had gone to play at Auburn and then transferred to Middle Tennessee State Landrum, being able to have a successful night, although his team lost 42-20.
Yeah, that's certainly good news. And for a guy to go, and he was underutilized for a variety of reasons when he was there at Auburn, for him to shine, well-deserved, and a outstanding talent, and from all accounts, you said, just a fine young man. So
certainly is.
That's certainly really good to see. I do have bad news, Pat. The Scoregami, College Agami, whatever she does, website, she has crashed it. Molly has crashed it.
Yeah, I think when we started talking about it, I think everyone just flocked to the website, and it's crashed.
Yep.
I can't get it to pull up.
So if someone has like a hardback SEC,
like go to the library, go down the hallway in your library,
all final scores ever book that you can use as reference to tell us when was the last time, or if it's ever happened, when an SEC football game ended with a 20-18 final score. We would love to hear that. So the text line is open, 205-834-9450. That is your way to get in with us, the easiest, most efficient way. Will, going back to Grayson McCall having to call it quits because of concussions. Will says his son had to give up football because of concussions. It was one of the hardest decisions he's ever had to make. Also, the question, do y'all remember when Georgia Southern played Alabama? I think it was 2010. Southern ran the ball very well against Bama. Thanks, y'all. Have a good day. Roll Tide. It was 2011. That actually happened.
And they did roll up a
offense.
Lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was that when we got the quote?
The tin horn?
Through the tin horn?
Yeah.
My pastor actually brought that up after our Wednesday night church last night. And I'd forgotten it was 2011.
I was about to say Georgia Southern and Citadel. Those are the two cupcake games that people remember from Nick Saban's tenure, where you got bad performances and infamous post-game speeches.
Georgia Southern's offense looks a lot different now.
Hey, I think I remember telling you this story, Landrum, but me and the family, we were actually up in the mountains in North Carolina, and it was that week of the Alabama. Believe it or not, I took a vacation day in the middle of football season, and it was the Georgia Southern Alabama game, because I'm like thinking, okay, let's go up there. It's not that big of a deal, and so I get up on top of this mountain, and like I'm checking scores, and I'm like, oh my God, what is happening here? And then all of a sudden I lose service, and Alabama is, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get down at the bottom of this mountain, and Alabama, this is going to be like the biggest upset in the history of college football. Georgia Southern's going to beat Alabama. And me gathering up the kids and Leanne and saying, we got to get down off this mountain right now because I don't have service and I don't know what's going on. I was like, never again will we take a trip ever during a football season. But
if Alabama had lost, were you immediately going to pack up the car and head back to Birmingham?
Do you think Paul Feinbaum would have let me stay in the mountains if Alabama would have lost to Georgia Southern?
No, I think I knew the answer. That's why I was asking the question.
I'd say, Paul, send the
rhetorical.
Jet. Send the jet. I'm coming home.
Send the jet. That's right. Trent Richardson was a finalist the year of RG3.
Okay.
The last time Josh says the SEC did not have representation in New York was 2017. The top 5 were Baker Mayfield, Bryce Love, Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, and Rashad Penny. Kerryon Johnson was the highest at 9th in voting.
Oh, my goodness. That's 2017?
2017, according to Josh. Kyle says, with Mizzou starters in question, no excuse for Bama not to win the game. That said, does that diminish Bama's win with the pollsters if their top starters aren't playing? I don't think so.
No, you just want to see him put together a good game at this point. It's about eye test right now because you don't have that.
Now, if they struggle and they win by a field goal, maybe so. Take care of business, no, not going to happen. Plenty more texts that we'll get to throughout the show. But coming up next, speaking of Alabama, Rodney Orr, who's in Tuscaloosa, Tighter Insiders Rodney Orr, breaks down this game versus Mizzou and the rest of the season, kind of gives us the temperature. What's going on in Tuscaloosa? Three-man front, Landrum, Pat, Molly, Conrad, your home, America's home for college football and more. Jocks 94.5.
Welcome back in. It's hour number 2 of Three-Man Front. We'll go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama momentarily and talk to Rodney Orr from Tighter Insider. We hope to catch up with Rob Pate later on in this hour. And then the 12 o'clock hour, Brett McMurphy from the Action Network will get his thoughts on his bowl projections and also what's going on with conference realignment and just the health overall of college football. Brett McMurphy will join us at noon. Then Brett Norsworthy will join us at 12:30, Landrum, from his normal spot there in the Bluff City of Memphis, Tennessee, getting ready to host WHBQ Radio and also part of the Ole Miss Radio Network.
Well, from daily exercisers and youth athletes to elite professionals, UAB Sports and Exercise Medicine treats everyone with the same level of exceptional care with board-certified professionals, state-of-the-art imaging and injury prevention programs. Their comprehensive team is here to keep you in the game. Visit uabmedicine.org/sports or call 205-930-8339 to make an appointment. UAB Sports and Exercise Medicine. They sponsor the Road to Recovery. We do it every Friday with one of their fine physicians at 12:45. Visit uabmedicine.org/sports today Knowledge moving medicine forward.
Joining us now on the Buyer's Ride hotline from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Interested to get his take on what he saw and witnessed over the weekend as Alabama falls to Tennessee. Rodney Orr joins us from Tighter Insider. Rodney, I hope you're doing well on this Thursday.
I am doing well. How are you guys?
We are doing very well. Just your snapshot of what went wrong in regard. I know there's a lot. There's probably a laundry list of things. But what was the thing that really just jumped off the page at you last week with the big loss at Tennessee?
You know what? It's kind of like I think you asked me last week what I really thought would be key, and I said, can Alabama get out of its own way? And I think they had 15 penalties. A lot of opportunities that they blew. That great opportunities to the first half especially. I mean, they had a chance to really distance themselves, and they couldn't. Kind of let Tennessee hang around, and in the second half, Tennessee kind of made the plays that they had to make. So again, I think it goes back to what we said last week. There's a lot of mistakes I think were avoidable that Alabama just could not avoid, and I think in the end it cost them.
Rodney, I'm sure you've seen it there on the message boards at Tighter Insider, and we've heard it here on our show, and people questioning the health, maybe something going on that we don't know about with Jalen Milroe. Do you believe it's something physical going on, or do you think with Jalen Milroe at some points it's just between the ears?
I talked to someone actually Sunday night. I did my Sunday thoughts and late Sunday night after each game, and they said he's fine. You play the quarterback position, you run the ball some, you're going to get beat up a little. Nothing significant. Said he was fine, and there was nothing that would from playing close to full speed. That was again Sunday night, and I don't think it's really physical. I think it's a confidence thing to me. As you watch him, I think when Jalen gets in a good groove or rhythm, gets going in a positive way, he's really good. But I think sometimes when he makes a bad play or two, it seems like it kind of just builds on it. And his performance kind of starts going in that direction. So I think it's really we've even heard Kalen DeBoer say, one of his things is Jalen beats himself up so much, and I think. In that game, he just seemed to kind of never really get into that groove on a consistent basis.
I want to give credit to where credit is due, because we went into the game last week between those two teams. We knew that Tennessee, one of the best teams in America against the run, their defense overall very stout. Alabama only musters 75 yards of rushing. But we have seen signs that Alabama's had problems trying to run the ball through, between the tackles. Do you think, with what they currently have on that offensive line and what they have in the backfield, that this Alabama team, can they, with the time remaining in the season, turn into a more of a running style team, or is it just going to be whatever Jalen Milroe can do on the outside?
Well, again, I think that's a really good question. I mean, we're now getting pretty deep into the season to kind of find that identity. Kind of seems like what it's been. I mean, Jalen Milroe was responsible for 59 plays last week. He threw it 45 times. He ran it 14. I mean, I still think, you're not getting the ball to Justice Haynes and to Jam Miller, like you said, kind of on those traditional runs that you talked about last week. And I think, again, it kind of got out of balance a little bit, it seemed to me, this past week. So I don't know that we're going to get to that point. Again, we'll have to let it play out, see how it develops over time. They've got a bye week coming up, and I know that a year ago they made some changes offensively in the bye week. As you recall, right before the LSU game, we started seeing Milroe more as a runner at that time. So, I mean, maybe there's some things that they'll tweak in that bye week. We'll see.
Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, joining us here on Three Man Front. All of our guests join us on the Buyer's Right hotline. This Missouri team, Nate Noel, the running back, now listed as questionable instead of doubtful. Brady Cook, they said he's been shaky. They're starting quarterback all week long. Not having all of those hands on deck in this matchup in Tuscaloosa, Rodney, is there anything else about this particular Missouri team that makes you weary heading into the matchup on Saturday?
Well, again, you said Cook is now questionable. Is that what you said?
Well, Nate Noel is. Cook is still listed as doubtful.
Okay. Well, then that's a big blow. I mean, if he certainly misses the game, that was the word I know late last night, last I'd heard. because again, Drew Pine, I watched him. I just think that when you look at the difference between where he is right now, and where Cook is, there's kind of a pretty big margin there. So if Cook's out, obviously that's big for Alabama. But here's the thing too, it's especially big to me because obviously Pine's not quite the thrower, the passer that Cook is, and so obviously he won't be able to take probably as good of advantage of those receivers that he has. But you look at Alabama's secondary, it's really kind of beat up. I don't know exactly how they're going to field them out there on Saturday, how they're going to line them up. Sabb's out. Devontae Smith has been really banged up. Xavier Brown, even Damani Jackson still pretty bruised up from the South Carolina game. So they're far from 100%. They're having to work guys at different positions. Some guys that don't have a lot of experience at those positions to kind of be able to have plan as Kalen DeBoer said, plan A, B, and C. So I think Alabama's secondary, it's really questionable heading into this game. So if Cook is out, that's certainly big for Alabama.
In regards to what you're seeing from the wide receivers, it goes without saying that Ryan Williams is the star of that group. But with Law coming back last week, Prentice coming back last week, of course, Law made headlines for all the wrong reasons. What do you think the current status is of that wide receiver core in regards to moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. How many times did Ryan Williams get targeted? 20 in this last game?
18.
18. Yeah.
Yep.
Bernard obviously has been a real contributor as well, and hopefully you get Prentice back at full speed here soon because you need as many of those weapons as you can get. And again, Kendrick Law, he didn't really get targeted much in this game and had the penalty, like you said, at the end of the game that was really costly. So, it's really big. Hopefully they can get those guys at full speed.
Rodney, I'm just curious because we, listening to Alabama fans before the start of the season, we heard a lot of, we expect them to lose a couple of games. It's a transition year. You got a new coach coming in. Look at that schedule. And then Georgia happened. So all of a sudden, at least my expectations for this Alabama team go straight back to, okay, we're going to get the Bama that we got. And then we get Vanderbilt. Then we get a close win over South Carolina. And then what we had last Saturday in Neyland Stadium, what has the temperature been with a lot of the folks on the message board as far as expectations and kind of the ebbs and flows so far this season?
Yeah, kind of like what you said. You watch the Georgia game, even though the second half was a real damper, it kind of brought you back up to reality a little bit. You had to make the big play to save the lead that you had. And then, obviously Brian Williams made that big play. But so I think we're really high. And again, that was a national championship or SEC championship type atmosphere in that stadium that night. There was a lot of emotion, a lot of electricity. And, I know I certainly had some concerns coming back, going to Vanderbilt. How did this team, did they get their feet back on the ground? I know the coaching staff really worked hard. You remember they put the rat traps out around the facility to kind of get the guys' attention. And they come out and all credit to Vanderbilt. They're a lot better than they have been in the past, and they won the game and all of that. But as far as the fans, I think the expectations obviously took a big hit there. And then the South Carolina game wasn't quite like you would expect it to go. And then this game. And so it's, I would say it's probably, now you got to remember 2007 was obviously that first year. So there wasn't like huge expectations. But I would say as far as just the temperature right now on that board, it's pretty Saban.
In regards to moving forward for this season, we're sitting here right now. Alabama's a huge favorite at home against a Missouri team that's very beat up. You got LSU down the pike. You still have Auburn on the schedule and a trip to Norman, Oklahoma. Is there a number? And I'm not asking you if there's a chance that Kalen DeBoer loses his job. But if this thing finishes with 4 losses and a loss at home to Auburn, seriously, what kind of pressure is he looking at moving into year number 2? Because you and I have seen this play out over the last 30 years. And especially now, the patience of folks is not what it used to be. And there wasn't a lot back in the old days. But is there a potential or a number of him going into next season that, like, look, if you don't get to this point, we might have to relook at this?
Yeah, well, I kind of think right now that the pressure's there anyway, to be honest with you. I mean, and
Okay.
again, it's not that he's going to lose the job or anything
No,
like
right.
that.
Understand. Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and even for like next year, I think that like you said, sometimes we can sit here and say this, but when if it got to that point, all of a sudden you see the magnitude of it and you feel it, and things get a little bit hotter than what we think right now, maybe. But no, I mean, I really think that look, the roster isn't quite what it had been, and I truly believe that. But with that said, I still think Alabama could very easily be undefeated right now. But things like Landrum said, things happen in a transition. This is the first time for everything as a group together with his coaching staff and his players, so things can slip. I would hate to think that what you're saying, that scenario would play out. But no, I think next year's it's going to be a big year, and we knew that. No matter who really replaced Nick Saban, this is kind of what you expected if they lost a few games, right? I mean, especially games that were unexpected, like the Vanderbilt game. So I think here on out, everything's big.
Based on this and roster and looking ahead to next year, do you expect Kalen DeBoer, this Alabama coaching staff, and I realize there's guys that could opt to leave. We never know in the transfer portal era, but would you expect Alabama to be very active in the portal and trying to replace some of those guys that are instant, ready to come in and contribute next season?
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, I think Alabama, obviously they're set to finish the recruiting really strong. They're still in on some guys, and then I think the portal is going to be something that they're going to utilize even more this year because now they've been in place. So I certainly expect it, and there you go again. You don't really know even what your roster is going to look like next year because you could lose a lot of players, and then you get who do you bring in, how do they all mesh, all of these types of things. So it's really hard to even project ahead.
So, Rodney, in regards to the recruiting trail, and you just mentioned it a few moments ago that Alabama continues to excel. They're still up either number one or number two in the recruiting rankings, depending on what service you look at. Are you hearing any wavering on the recruiting trail from any of the verbals? I know that it's inevitable that you're going to have some guys that's going to move on and go elsewhere even after they verbally committed for a long time. That's just the life we live in now. But are you hearing anything or any signs of trouble on the recruiting trail in regards to this Bama team being sluggish over the last month?
There's been a couple of guys that I know Dejon Lee, the 5-star corner out of California, is continuing to take visits, and there's some people that think Georgia's in there, or Oregon's still recruiting him extremely hard. And we've talked about Caleb Cunningham. I think he's going back over to Ole Miss this weekend. So he kind of continues to take visits. Again, I don't know that that's on high alert by any means, but it's certainly I would always keep an eye on. Off the top of my head, I don't know if there's anyone else. Several of those guys had, shut it down after the Georgia game, but that doesn't mean anything. They could always open it back up, and that happens sometimes. But, those are Dejon Lee's one that certainly comes to my mind. But as you guys know, as you just said, these guys that are highly recruited, these types of programs are going to continue to really pursue them. And, we'll just have to see how it goes.
All right, Rodney, what is your prediction for Saturday's game? I know that the line, according to Vegas, because of the question marks of Brady Cook and also Nate Noel, it is swelled to 17.5. How do you think this one plays out?
Well, my prediction was 27-24, and that was with Brady Cook. And I thought that was, I thought this was a game that could go either way. And with Pine, I mean, I understand why that line would really jump. So if Cook's out, I feel really a lot better about Alabama's chances here. So, we'll see. But again, regardless of who the quarterback is, Alabama's really got a beat up secondary.
You like 3 touchdowns better? Is that how much better you feel? I'm kidding. You don't have to answer that.
He's trying to help. He's trying to get you to help him with his picks, Rodney. Don't buy that.
Just this one pick.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm pretty conservative, Landrum.
I know you are. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. You can follow him there, titerinsider.com. We always appreciate the time, Rodney. Thank you. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, guys. I appreciate it. Take care.
Rodney joins us, as all of our guests do, on the Buyers Right hotline for all of your insurance, financial, and HR needs. It's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner.
When it comes to plumbing, always have a pro on standby. Write this number down, 205-516-4927. That's the number to Iron Mountain Drains and Plumbing, rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They're family-owned and operated. They handle everything: faucet repairs, water heater maintenance, commercial plumbing, sewer line repairs, and so much more. One call will do it all, 205-516-4927, or go to ironmountainworld.com.
Our reaction to what Rodney just told us with Alabama and Mizzou. Don't forget, 11:45, Rob Pate's going to talk Auburn and Kentucky. It is a busy Thursday. 3-man front and Jocks, 94.5.
Always appreciate Rodney Orr joining us from Tighter Insider. Some very honest comments from Rodney about this Alabama football team, where things currently stand. He likes Alabama in a really close one. Now, his prediction that he gave on Tighter Insider TV earlier this week, that was with Brady Cook at quarterback, Landrum, for the Mizzou Tigers. Of course, now he is highly doubtful for the game against Alabama. But you can tell with things not going as well as they anticipated to be going right now for this Alabama football team, I think a little bit of lacking of confidence, even for those that cover the team, because he's still got Bama in a close win against Mizzou.
Yeah, I still don't know how much I think Alabama wins the game, but whereas it's been like clockwork in the recent memory with Alabama, at least for me in covering a spread, we've had exceptions. It's been a lot tougher of late. And I don't know how much more not having Nate Noel, not having Brady Cook, but having a 17.5-point line, how in love I am with that.
Well, a lot of it to me also comes down to Jalen Milroe, right? Because if you get Jalen Milroe performing similarly to how he did last week, there's no way Alabama's going to cover the spread. They could win, but I mean, if you're talking about a team that's only going to be able to muster 20, 24 points on Saturday, that's going to be ugly. And just based on what we've seen for the last month now, even with Brady Cook not playing, you think they're going to win by 3 scores? That's just tough for me to see.
Do we get an Alabama team? Because Kalen Borden might not mention it, but these guys, they know what's on the line here. And if you want to get to a college football playoff, it's got to be a backs against the wall mentality, wounded animal mentality. Do we see an inspired Alabama football team? And to your point, Conrad, about Jalen Milroe, play percentages. I hate to say it, but what are the chances that we have another lackluster performance from Jalen Milroe after what we've gotten against South Carolina and Tennessee?
I mean, I guess it depends on how banged up he is. And look, I know what Kalen DeBoer said at the beginning of the week, and we know nobody is 100% healthy at this point in the season, but I guess it's how big of an impact is that going to have on him moving forward? Was it a bad day? They're able to take care of it in practice, and now he's back to normal, but his health is going to play a big part on Saturday, I think.
For sure. If you're looking to upgrade and enhance your outdoor living area and landscape, our friends at Second Generation Masonry, the team for beautifying any area. Their expert team crafts durable brick, concrete, and elegant stone creations that can elevate any space, from fire pits, outdoor fireplace. Me and the wife still thinking about getting one. Landscape steps, garden walls, stone patios, and walkways to custom driveways. These are your guys. Take your outdoor living area to the next level. Check out Second Generation Masonry. All the completed projects, both residential and commercial, at secondgenerationmasonry.com. Great Alabama-based company. Over 2 decades in business. Secondgenerationmasonry.com. Make sure you tell them Landrum from 3-Man Front sent you.
I want to go back to something that Conrad was just talking about this Missouri Tiger football team. There's no doubt in August and September, I mean, they were clicking right along, but when you're playing the likes of Buffalo and teams like that, you're going to put up some impressive numbers. But since they have gotten into the month of October, which also includes the game against UMass, they're averaging almost a yard less per play, and they're down to 356 yards of total offense in the month of October, as compared to 475 yards of total offense in the months of August and September. So once that schedule changed to the SEC and you're playing the likes of Texas A&M and Auburn, to me, that just screamed last week. Auburn did a really nice job of kind of bottling them up. And Auburn's defense, statistically speaking, is about, I think they're 1 ahead of Alabama in the SEC defensive rankings categories. So with that being said, you would think that Alabama would be able to put the clamps down on this Mizzou offense. And if Brady Cook's not playing and Noel's not playing, not worrying about whether you cover or not, I think Alabama fans at this point, Conrad, would just be happy with a W and get to the bye week and then concentrate on LSU and try to get some guys healthy.
Yeah, I mean, a win is the most important thing, right? Because at that point, you can still hold on to the hope of, all right, we're going to go on bye week. We're going to get some guys healthy. We're going to have an extra week to prepare, and we can go and potentially upset an LSU team on the road and get right back into the mix of things in the college football playoff. So, while, yes, a win is very important, I also do think not only for the fans, but, I don't want to call them style points. That's what we used to say in the BCS era, right? When it was 2 teams kind of fighting it out, you had to have those style points. But we know eye test is a big part of how the committee factors in their decisions. And at this point, regardless of who they've beaten, who they've lost to, they don't pass the eye test. And I think that's a big part of this moving forward is you need to keep winning. But if you keep winning games by 2-3 points, I don't know how much confidence that's going to give the committee that you really are one of the 12 best teams.
I mean, you start looking at, all right, you win this game, a win in Baton Rouge, or a win over LSU, that's a must. You got to have that win.
Yeah.
Norman, Oklahoma, that's not going to impress many people. Everybody has buried and said their final respects for this Oklahoma football team this year. That's not going to woo anybody and the rest of the teams on that schedule. So you're right. You got to start playing better.
If you perform poorly against like an Oklahoma, then that's going to hurt you.
No doubt. So where does this team go from here? But can you imagine if we're looking back on Kalen DeBoer's several years from now and people go, wait a minute, in his first season, he lost to who? Vanderbilt, Missouri. Who else are you going to throw in there? I mean, Tennessee, no matter what the year, you can say, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. But some of those teams, it doesn't feel right, doesn't look right. That's for sure. The text line is open, 205-834-9450. And this one coming in, always a good segment with Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. You can find that at the podcast, jocksfm.com. This one on Jalen Milroe. I don't think Milroe's injured. I think he saw the press clippings after the Georgia game and has started making business decisions on the field. Pat, what are your thoughts about that?
He definitely has had more financial opportunities than he did last year. I think I saw where even during the bye week, Conrad, he was cutting a commercial or two. Because I saw that on a bunch of his social media. Listen, one thing is for sure, and you just look at the numbers, he has been pressured 47% of the time every time he drops back to pass. 47%. You can go and you can look at all the quarterbacks in the world you want to look at, but when you are pressured that many times, I'm not making an excuse for him because, listen, he's done some boneheaded things, especially like taking the safety against South Carolina and missing wide open guys, okay? But there's also a fact that maybe his footwork right now that you're seeing in the pocket is because he feels that pressure and that internal clock in his head is saying, uh-oh, I'm in trouble because here I am. I'm being pressured again. And listen, with the Georgia game, what did he do very well? He was able to get to the edge. Alabama was setting the edge. He was able to take it to the outside and run the ball effectively. Now in the second half, Kirby made the adjustments and they kind of put the clamps on him. But for me, it's just the fact that he has just gotten in some really bad habits over the last couple of weeks. Just kind of got to get through this rough patch, try to get to the bye week with a win where you get a little bit more time to get a deep breath and work on some things that he's obviously some rust has really set in.
Yeah, and I mean, like Pat said, he's certainly made bad decisions, and there are problems with him that have nothing to do with whether he is a little banged up or not, whatever. But when I just go and look at the Tennessee game and some of the throws, now he does miss some guys that are wide open, and that is just he's not making the right read. But when you go and look at a lot of the passes that he made where it was a little behind a guy, maybe a little overthrown, that's the kind of stuff to me that whether it's with your footwork because you're being pressured or because you're a little banged up and you can't put as much weight on one leg as opposed to the other, that's just where those things start to come into my mind of, if you're making those mistakes that frequently, it leads me to believe that there is something physically wrong with you that's inhibiting your ability to throw like you normally do.
Well, and those mistakes are going to be magnified when you don't have as many good players around you as Alabama's had in the past, not only on the offensive side, but the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, to cover up some of those problems, yeah.
Yeah, we continue with a text. Joseph says, Ty Simpson isn't banged up. At least let him come in just to see what he can do.
Okay, let's say they do that, and then he comes in and he's bad. What does that do to Jalen Milroe? Is the rest of your year shot then?
No, maybe it makes Milroe feel better. I'm just...
maybe.
I'm putting the shoe on the other foot.
I doubt it, but maybe.
No. I don't think that's going to happen.
Do you really want... I mean, a big discussion in Texas this week has been what happened with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Do you really want to deal with that in Alabama right now? I don't think so.
This one in from our friend out in Oklahoma listening on the Jocks 94.5 app. Bama could win every game the rest of the schedule by 1 point and win with their strength of schedule. They'll be in the playoff at 10-2. Yeah, you would think so. But are they paired up with another 10-2 team? Does it come down between a 10-2 Tennessee and a 10-2 Alabama?
I just look at it as you want to leave no doubt. And you've already started doubt because you've lost 2 games. But when I'm talking about the eye test, that's what I'm talking about is you don't want it to come down to, well, are you going to take Alabama or Team B in the playoff? You want it to be beyond a shadow of a doubt. Alabama has proven that they're the best 2-loss team or whatever in the country.
This one comes in from Paul, big LSU fan. He says, how are you guys feeling about LSU and Texas A&M? I will give you a stat that I have gathered. LSU is 12-1 against the spread versus Texas A&M in their last 13 games. Texas A&M is 1-5 versus LSU at home in their last 6 games.
And LSU and Texas A&M have played 8 times as ranked teams, and LSU has won every single time.
Okay, so Paul,
Those are good numbers.
without giving away who we're picking, better to forget it. Coming up tomorrow at 12:30, we just gave you some stats that favor your team. Go Tigers. Molly?
Go Tigers.
Yeah. Brandon says, answering today, does Keelan Russell start for Alabama next season? I will say no.
No.
Pat, would you like to weigh in on the phenom from Texas?
I would echo that and say no.
All right, we'll keep the text open, 205-834-9450. We will talk Auburn, Kentucky coming up at 11:45 with Rob Pate. We roll on this Thursday. Glad you're with us, Jock 94.5.
It is the Thursday edition of Three Man Front. Pat Smith, Conrad Van Order, Molly Robinson, Landrum Roberts with you until 2 o'clock. We hope to catch up with Rob Pate, former Auburn DB, coming up in about 10 minutes from now. Also in the 12 o'clock hour, Brett McMurphy. Brett Norsworthy will join us from WHBQ Radio in Memphis on this Football Thursday.
How about our friends at Dobbs Ford? I actually went out to Parkway East yesterday, and there to greet me, as he will probably be right out front to greet you, was Joey Goshen. He and his wife Rachel, the managing partners of Dobbs Ford. Been telling you I was going to go and pick up one of those new Ford Broncos. This is the Black Diamond Edition. It's the SUV off-road package. It's got the LED fog lamps. It's got all the bells and whistles. I'll be honest with you guys, I kind of want to take it off-roading, but I'm sure that they wouldn't appreciate that. They're letting me drive this beautiful vehicle. It's not only the Broncos and the Dobbs Edition Broncos that you can get. How about the F-150s? How about the Explorers, the Mustangs? Check out the entire fleet there at Dobbs Ford, dobbsfordbirmingham.com. That is the website you need to know. They'll beat any competitor's price. They're wonderful people. Just go and talk to them. If you never buy anything from Dobbs, you're going to appreciate the experience. Total transparency. They're going to work with you, and you're going to get top dollar for your trade. Check them out, dobbsfordbirmingham.com. Parkway East, Joey, Rachel, the entire team, they're wonderful. Go see and feel the difference at Dobbs Ford.
All right, so last night in college football, we had something happen that had not happened in a very long time. Matter of fact, it took 23 years that a team went 0-5, or started off 0-5, defeated a team that was 5-0 or better, and that took place last night over in the state of Georgia as Kennesaw State. They took out Liberty 27-24. We're going to listen now to the Kennesaw State radio network. This is the way it sounded when they thought the game had ended. If you're watching the game ended, and then all of a sudden they say put 1 second back on the clock, but nothing happened with the 1 second. But this is the way it sounded. A very happy Kennesaw State as they get the big win, 27-24.
4 men behind him, 3 deep. Salter running to his right. Salter throws in the right sideline, out of bounds. The clock is expired. Give me liberty! Kennesaw State ends the undefeated season for the Flames and secures its first ever FBS victory. October 23rd, 2024, in front of a national audience, Kennesaw State defies the odds and dethrones Liberty 27-24.
That's the way it sounded last night. They started a football program back in 2015, got its first ever win against an FBS opponent. They were nearly a 4-touchdown underdog in this game. More importantly, for CFP fans, you can probably go ahead and mark off Liberty as one of those teams that might be able to kind of sneak in because they lose to a winless until last night a Kennesaw State team. Now, Liberty, many people thought, Conrad, they were going to have to run the table to even get remote consideration. I'm talking about Liberty to get into the CFP. But the legit chance of them making the big dance is just not going to happen after that loss.
No, and I'll be completely honest with you personally. I'm happy about that. And it's nothing against, it's not like I hate Liberty or anything like that. It's just, we saw this last year where they ran the table and they got the New Year's Six bowl game and they got smoked by Oregon. And again, like I understand they schedule what they can, but you have an incredibly easy schedule. You're not going to be one of the 12 best teams in the country. We learned that for a fact last year. And so the fact that we can just kind of avoid that, because there's so many teams out there that we've just seen so much from, whether it's the military academies, you know, the Boise States, the UNLVs like Molly brought up earlier. I'm just glad that we can kind of remove Liberty from that conversation. I hope they go 11-1, have a great rest of the year, but I did not want to see a 50-point steamroll in the first round of the college football playoff, and that's likely what we would have gotten just like in the bowl game last year with Oregon.
Yeah, that would not have been a very good advertisement for the new CFP if that would have happened. Also in Conference USA, Jacksonville State was a big winner last night, 42-20. JSU, they racked up 575 yards of offense, 438 yards rushing. But how about Trey Stewart? If you have not watched him, watch Jacksonville State. They've got, matter of fact, their next opponent is going to be Liberty. Now, a lot of people were hoping that Jacksonville State and Liberty both were going to be undefeated when those two teams met next week. But Trey Stewart, he is a dog, man. I mean, this dude can run. He rushed for 210 yards last night for Jacksonville State and 1 touchdown. He was averaging 10 yards per carry against Middle Tennessee State last night. So Jacksonville State now has a 4-game win streak. That's the longest win streak for the Gamecocks since the 2020-2021 COVID season when they went 10-3. So that was a big win for Jacksonville State last night. So speaking of Conference USA, I'm going to ask you and Molly Conrad. Now we have a limited set of data, so I understand that the season has not been completed yet, but just off the top of your head or the eye test, I want to ask you, what conference so far in conference play, conference opponents against each other, what conference do you think has the most competitive point spread in conference play? What conference? It can be a non-Power 4 or Power 4, just all FBS. What conference do you think has the most competitive average point spread?
So essentially the games are the closest games.
Correct. Based on the average point spread in conference play.
I mean, I don't know if this is right or not, but just based on how much of it we consume, I mean, the SEC I feel like has got to be up there.
Okay.
Well, because I don't think it's the Big Ten, especially after last week. Yeah, is it the SEC?
Well, let me give you an FBS average, and then I'll let you guys whether you want to stay with that or you want to change it. The FBS average point spread in conference play is 9.22 points.
Okay.
That's the average across all FBS football.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the SEC then.
Is it the
You're gonna
MAC?
stick with it. It is the Big 12.
Okay.
Okay. 5.88 points per game. Coming in at number 2 is the MAC.
There it is.
Coming in at number 3 is the Sun Belt. Number 4, the Mountain West. Number 5, the ACC. At number 6, the American. The Big 10 comes in next. The SEC is next to last in the average point spread in conference play. You're such a SEC homer, Conrad, saying that the SEC is the most competitive.
We've just had so many competitive and close games. I thought that might be it. But
The average
the
point
Big 12,
spread,
that makes sense.
The average point spread, 11.24 points.
Okay. I mean,
Conference USA at 12.6.
okay. Yeah, and I mean, I guess a lot of it is also games in the SEC where teams are maybe more competitive, but it's not like, Mississippi State and Georgia, for example. It was competitive, but it's still a 10-point. Landrum's just standing behind me on the camera.
He was.
But it's still a 10-point win for Georgia. So that kind of makes sense. And the Big 12, I guess, they've been cannibalizing themselves for years now. So
It's good to see the MAC as they get ready
I know, I'm glad they're
for
on there.
for Tuesday night action, Molly. That they're getting things geared up.
I have a special place in my heart for the MAC.
There's no doubt. All right, when we come back on Three Man Front, we hope to catch up with Rob Pate, try to grab him. He's in some very high-powered meetings down in Montgomery. We're going to try to catch up with him, get his thoughts on the Auburn Tigers as they get ready to take on the Kentucky Wildcats as their month-long tour around the SEC continues. This is Three Man Front on Jocks 94.5.
11:48, little Survivor coming back on three-man front. That can only mean that Rob Pate's going to join us talking Auburn. We'll talk Auburn and Kentucky coming up. 6:45 Kroger Field in Lexington on Saturday night. Well, tonight we got two games in college football. We got Georgia Southern at Old Dominion at 6 o'clock. Tonight we have Syracuse at number 19 Pitt. A battle of 5-1 versus 6-0, 6:30 on ESPN. We also have the NFL tonight, 3 college games tomorrow, a slew of games on Saturday, and then all of the NFL on Sunday. There's one place to watch it. It's Rambler Sports Bar and Grill. They're at the Finnick near Railroad Park. They have the big video screens, the projectors, the high def, the quality sound. It is going to be unlike any sports bar viewing experience you've ever experienced. And the food and the drinks are amazing as well. It's Rambler Sports Bar and Grill. And don't forget about them on Sunday. They have all the NFL. I mean, all the NFL. Red Zone, NFL Sunday Ticket. You name the game, they have it. So if you and a group of your fans pull for a certain NFL team, you want the ideal place to watch it all the way through Sunday Night Football. It's Rambler Sports Bar and Grill. They're at the Finnick. 1630 2nd Avenue South. Make sure you tell them Landrum sent you. Rob Pate, former Auburn DB, kind enough to join us to talk Auburn. Rob, unfortunately, we'd seen that movie before. The way it all ended in Como, Auburn plays a really solid game, except for the very end, and they fall again. I know that you have experienced losses in your playing career, but put yourself in those guys' shoes and coming close so many times. When does it become too much and break your spirit?
You know, that's a great question because that's something I thought about today, and I was reading some of the commentary from some of the young guys particularly, and I just haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen it in their effort. I haven't seen it in their verbiage, their body language. I think that speaks really well to the maturity of a lot of these kids that, even though they're not finishing like we want them to, and I'm just as frustrated as the next person that, that they're not able to make the plays at gut check time and come out on top. But I'm also, I've seen enough football and recognize teams that quit versus teams that are fighting. And, I see a lot of things that are admirable and that I enjoy about this team. That they're right on the cusp. They just don't have the leadership or the moxie or the grit to be able to trust themselves to make the play or to have a leader step up when it's necessary to make a play. And I think that's partly probably from coaching. I think Coach Freeze has admitted some of that this week. I think it's partly just from lack of leadership, from being gutted as a team under Brian Harsin, and what Hugh Freeze walked in, and he only had like 15 guys that remained on the roster total, and so I think there's definitely a larger hill to climb than most of us think. But having said that, I mean, they're right there. I mean, they a receiver makes a grab, and Auburn, with all of their flaws, is up 3 scores on the road against a top 25 team in a packed out house. It's one thing to talk about making those plays. It's another thing to go do it, but they're literally right there. And the line between teams that are super successful and teams that are 2-5, Auburn's showing you how thin that line is. I think they're still a team that teams aren't going to want to have to play, but they're going to have to get in the fourth quarter and learn how to win football games.
Well, that was going to be my question, Rob, because if they can get a win against Kentucky, then all of a sudden you start looking at the rest of this schedule, and not that anybody thinks that there's not a game left that's not winnable, but you can get on a little bit of a roll here and potentially get into a position of being bowl eligible.
You could, and I think that it would be a Herculean effort considering what we've seen Auburn do at the end of the second halves of these games. But it's definitely possible. There's not a team left other than Alabama that should have a better roster than Auburn. Now, that's probably not as true of a statement as it's been in the past because of like we talked about, the roster being gutted and having to start anew. But Kentucky has never out-recruited Auburn. Missouri has never out-recruited Auburn for that fact. But, Vanderbilt does not have better personnel than Auburn. So you walk into that game, if you walk out a loser, then you've either gotten out-coached or you're just a team that doesn't know how to win. And I think right now that, they just have to have guys step up when it's critical and make the play. And like Coach Freeze was saying, not coaching and playing to not lose. There's such a difference, and you can see it and feel it as a program just when they get into that vein. So they just got to solve that riddle.
All right, we saw some wrinkles offensively, and that's where I want to go after the bye week last week in Columbia, Rob. And we've now had 7 games. What did you like that you saw either last week that was new or to that point? What would you use moving forward, and what would you scrap on that side of the ball?
So I liked having the full set backfield with the extra lead blocker getting the ball in Jeremiah Cobb's hands as well as Jarquez Hunter's hands more. So I thought a little bit more in the running game was nice. Also getting the ball in the true freshman receiver, number 11, Simmons. I think that he's electric and can be a playmaker. He doesn't need to be a gadget guy. He needs to be a guy he's just a legitimate playmaker. Get him the ball. I like we took a deep shot with Cam Coleman. I wish we'd do more deep shots. What I don't like and what I would scrap is often as taking the reads away from Peyton Thorne running the ball. He has actually been, if you look just statistically, he's been in the upper half of SEC quarterbacks in almost every stat. But his ability to run the ball in critical situations on down and distances, I just think they need to get away from that. Call a play that doesn't force him to read it and keep it, and just live with it. And so often, I think, as we're trying to play not to lose, the ball's ending up in his hands for negative yardage on plays that were run plays. And if I'm going to lose, I'm going to go down losing, giving you my best effort. And I don't think Peyton Thorne running the ball is Auburn's best. I think that's Auburn's last option. But that's what we're seeing at the end of these drives, and that should be scrapped.
All right, so quickly in the remaining minutes that we have with you, Rob, how do you think this is going to play out on Saturday in regards to Auburn? Can they get that first win on the road in the SEC?
I think they can. I just think that the law of probability says that this team's playing good enough that at some point they're going to break through. I saw a stat recently that Auburn's one of only 7 teams that has more than 6.5 yards per play on offense and less than 5 yards per play on defense. They're the only team that's not ranked that has that stat, and most of those teams are ranked really high. So they've got the ability to get it done. They just got to cross the finish line, and I think they get it done this week.
Rob, I heard a collective amen from Auburn fans listening to you when you said take the ball take the read option out of Peyton Thorne's hands in critical downs, because that has just not worked. Let's quit defining insanity.
I agree, but at the same time, let me say this. I think Peyton Thorne's a warrior.
Yeah.
I appreciate the heart that he goes out and plays with, but at the same time, he's not your best option to run the ball in the fourth quarter.
He reminds me of a Rob Pate on the other side of the ball back in the late 90s. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Pluck and grit, Rob.
Well, I'd have definitely taken whatever NIL money he gives.
You didn't get any sweaty wads of cash handed off to you?
I got none. No.
Oh, well, they knew better. Rob Pate, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Safe travels. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. War Eagle.
Rob Pate joining us. All of our guests join us on the Buyers Right Hotline. For all of your insurance, financial, and HR needs, it's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner. We don't slow down. We just speed up. The hour of Brett's. Brett McMurphy, Brett Norsworthy, next on Three Man Front. Straight up noon here on this Thursday. It is three-man front. Landrum, Pat, Conrad, and Molly. Glad you're with us. For the folks listening in North Alabama on the Ump, there in the Huntsville area, we appreciate it. The folks there in the capital city of Montgomery on Sports Radio 740. And those of you watching on Jocks TV, you can find it. If you haven't been able to view the show, we are up and live running all day long, beginning with Morning Jocks and Mac and Cube. And then us here on three-man front. You can find it there, Jocks TV 945. You can search it on YouTube. It's really easy to find. Or you can access it via the Jocks 94.5 app. We are efforting to be joined by Brett McMurphy, college football, one of the best insiders in all of college football when it comes to the changing landscape. Also, the bowl projections that we get from the Action Network as well. A lot of your texts continue to roll in here on the show, and we just were joined by Rob Pate, Pat, and what he had to say about Auburn. I think some really telling things, and this text reads, I couldn't agree with Rob Pate more. Auburn is a team that simply just doesn't know how to win yet. And that's the truth. That's the way it sounds simple, but do you need any more evidence?
No, and I agree with that. And I think when you watch an Auburn football game, the thing that's not going to give a lot of people a lot of solstice in regards to, oh my goodness, we're not winning football games. You have not seen this football team. When you turn on the television, they do not look like a 2-5 football team. And the definition of that to me is that a team that has quit. You got a lot of guys that are griping and complaining on the sidelines with one another. It just looks like they would rather be anywhere else or having a root canal than playing a football game. They are still fighting every game for Auburn, and so you would think that if they can get one of those close wins, and it could happen this weekend against Kentucky, if that were to happen, then all of a sudden you could see some momentum here at the back end of the season. But if you continue to have another loss like this week against Kentucky, then all of a sudden all those other things that we said that we haven't seen yet, Landrum, it's a step closer of actually seeing guys potentially decide to fold up the tents and call it a year.
Drake, one of our resident Florida fans, texts in the question, guys, isn't Hugh Freeze starting out like Billy Napier when he took over at Florida? The only difference is Auburn hasn't started losing recruits yet. Yes, I would say so. You've had close games. You've had losses that you think you should have won, but so far so good. There's a long way to go until that first signing day that we're going to get coming up in December. So if you know, there's two trains of thought. It's if you're a recruit and you say, hey, this is going to continue. I don't believe in the coaching staff. I don't want to play for a team that doesn't go bowling, doesn't contend for championships. That's one train of thought. The other would be, well, what the coaches are telling me is accurate. This team is really close. They need guys like me to put them over the hump. And man, I like how much these young guys are playing. Just think about what the future holds. And then NIL. So maybe your price and what you were demanding, the NIL, what that could mean for keeping a recruit, because you've got other guys that are continuing to recruit these guys, and what happens, there remains to be seen. But you're right, some similarities there with Hugh Freeze and Billy Napier and how they started their particular tenures at their respective schools. Going back to that potential scoregami in the SEC. Chill says Boston College beat Tennessee 20-18 back in 1987.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Would that have been Flutie?
87. That might have been after.
Or was he that after? Maybe so. Jonathan says Milrose, our quarterback. Shut up, Bama fans. If you don't like it, put on Auburn gear. Yeah, Conrad. No, Conrad didn't say that. Joseph said, I'm not saying let Ty take over, but a 2-week rest could be good, especially if he's hurt. Nobody thinks he's hurt.
Well, I think the reality for Alabama.
Rodney Orr doesn't think he's hurt.
Yeah, well, I also just think the reality for Alabama is, I mean, who knows? Maybe he could go out there and play spectacularly, but you need your best players out there right now because you just need to win games.
This one rolling in, I have no context on this text and what it was about, but 60% of the time, it works every time. Sex Panther cologne. Anchorman.
Yeah, that's factual.
Why do we call it NIL? Are we paying them for their name, image, likeness, or performance on the field? Well, it's a fair point. the name on the back of the jersey that performs on the field.
Yes.
But no, in the spirit of
what it was initially
all of the
supposed to
discussions
be.
for 10 years and when are we going to get name, image, and likeness, it was going to be the exception, not the rule, and it quickly became the rule. Who could have saw that coming with a gray area, and let's just pay these guys to be on our campus. And there's been schools that have been doing it for years, and now they can do it above board and put a nice little logo and justify it. Steven says, all I can say is go Tigers. This one rolling in, roll the dice and put Austin Mack in, the transfer from Washington, Pat. You're not ready for the Mack attack?
I don't think so, but.
BB from Chelsea, speaking of the Mac, she says she loves her some Mac. Bowling Green State University alum, attended there when Nick Saban played for Kent State. Greatness comes out of the Mac. Just ask my grandkids. Laughing, crying emoji. We love you, BB. Thank you. Wild Hands Robinson on the Sex Panther. It burns the nostrils. Apparently does. We appreciate the text, 205-834-9450. The phone lines are also open, 800-239-WJOX. And Brandon, he is in Leeds, Alabama. Brandon, welcome in.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call, as always. I did promise Conrad that I'm not going to bring up the Stinky Fish Challenge that I laid out yesterday. But
it's still out there, and we are working on the GoFundMe and the charity. It's a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
Well, the reason I was calling in is you guys were talking about, Auburn and, just being up ahead and just not being prepared when they come back out to, try to finish the game. I feel like it's both Alabama and Auburn. I'm a big Bama fan, and it just seems like that they don't make any kind of adjustments because they feel like, well, the first half they had their way and we don't have to make any adjustments. But it does seem like that both of them, if they made any kind of adjustments in the halftime, would be how can we flub this game up to where it's either going to be close or we're just going to, just barely get by. And I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Yeah,
thanks, guys.
And thank you, Brandon. We appreciate you listening and calling in. Pat, we mentioned this, and this is just a couple of days ago that it came up. Oftentimes, halftime adjustments, they're overrated. Not that they don't happen, and at times they certainly hold value. But with these coaches, the analysts that they have at their disposal in most cases, they are going through not only plan for the game, but contingency plan, more contingency plans. They're going through not only this year's tape, but the amount of hours spent on putting in a game plan, and I don't care who you're playing, it would blow people's minds. I'm not saying from a Kalen DeBoer or Hugh Freeze, they obviously have other responsibilities, but that's why you have so many people in that building. So a lot of times there's just, it comes down to if we execute the way that we're supposed to, this should be working. Let's go and let's try it again. I think a lot of times we get frustrated as fans watching games thinking, scrap it, go away from it. We're not seeing the all 22 that those coaches are seeing on each and every play.
No, you're right. And not to mention the fact that there's such a limited time frame in regards to actually being in the locker room.
Yes.
Now they might scrap some type of plan that they had just based on the scoreboard. But the execution is a big thing that you just laid out. I do think that gets overplayed. But in the case of what Kirby Smart did at halftime, I think that was just a message to his football team of, look, let's go out there, play loose, play fast. We can't play any worse than what we did in the first half. Let's just go give it our best shot. And you saw the reaction. They did. They were able to go out there, play footloose and fancy free, and just pin their ears back, go after Alabama, go for it on fourth down, just do all those type things, throw out conventional wisdom because they fell so far behind. But for guys to actually make those so-called halftime adjustments, I do believe that is just an overinflated idea that a lot of people like to kind of hone in on when things aren't going well.
And it's easy for us to be so, we have that reflex where we say, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Well, maybe they're not good at it. Or maybe the coach knows something that we don't because he's around this team. And the last thing you want to do is totally move away from what you're best at, what you're really good at. Doesn't mean you can't alter certain things, but you certainly don't want to go and say, hey, let's go under center when you've worked on it absolutely zero that week and very little in the offseason or the fall practice leading up to that. That's not realistic. And the amount of time at halftime, and my eyes were open up to it, just being down there with a team and traveling with a college football team for the last 3 years. There's so much of guys just trying to get their legs, get hydrated, maybe get a snack, other things that are taking place, whether it's training staff working on them. Coaches go and huddle separately, but it's not like a big kumbaya where everyone's sitting there like you would be in a team room that week and looking at a projector screen. That's just not real. Not that those screens aren't there, but usually that's just position specific and maybe just a handful of guys that are paying attention to certain things.
No, you're absolutely right. And listen, I mean, you experience it every week with UAB, being on the sideline and going into halftime and just seeing the logistics involved. Matter of fact, I think the only time that you get any type of expanded type of halftime is when you get to maybe the college football championship game, where you might have a little bit of extra entertainment at halftime. And obviously the Super Bowl has a big Super Bowl show, but a lot of times these halftimes are so condensed and you got players going in, maybe getting something looked at, getting retaped, using the facilities, whatever the case may be. Like you said, just you don't have everybody sitting in a big room like you do on a Monday as you're getting ready to put a game plan in for the upcoming week. Well, let me give you a game plan. You need to head to Trussville. You need to go to Courtesy GMC in Trussville, located right off of I-459 exit 32, because right now they've got up to $15,000 off MSRP on a new 2024 GMC Sierra. Multiple to choose from. The pricing is on the Hot Elevation Premium Package with 4-wheel drive, leather interior, sunroof, 20-inch gloss black wheels, blacked out accents on the exterior, great looking truck, and even better deal on these while they last. So go by and see Courtesy GMC in Trussville, located off of I-459 exit 32, or visit them online at courtesybirmingham.com.
Well, persistence pays off. Brett McMurphy, college football insider. He's going to join us next. You don't want to miss it. 3-man front and Jocks 94.5. 12-16, three-man front, Landrum, Pat, Conrad, and Molly. Glad you're with us here on this Thursday. A couple of games tonight in college football. Also, we have a game in the NFL. The Vikings taking on the Rams. You can hear that game right here on Jocks 94.5 at 7:15. That follows the Bill Clark Show, which you will hear and you can watch there on Jocks TV at 6 o'clock tonight. So a busy night. We are honored to be joined by America's college football insider, the best in the business. It's Brett McMurphy, and he joins us here on Three Man Front. Brett, hope you're doing well on this Thursday.
Hey, good to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I will ask you, and I'm going to lead off with something that hits close to home, but what we saw last night, and you had Kennesaw State, a 4-touchdown underdog, getting their first win over an FBS opponent as they take out previously unbeaten Liberty. Was that a bigger upset to you, or was it Vanderbilt beating Alabama a few weeks ago in Nashville?
I mean, technically, Kennesaw State's the bigger upset, but historically, Vanderbilt's the bigger upset. But if college football needs a theme for this year, it's I'm sure you guys or your kids or somebody, fans of Stranger Things. We're in the upside down world. Because we've got NIU beating Notre Dame, we've got Vandy over Alabama, we've got a 4-touchdown underdog Kennesaw State, their first ever FBS win against Liberty. Army, Navy, and Indiana are undefeated. Alabama is ranked higher in basketball than Indiana in football, and Indiana is ranked higher than Alabama in football, and Alabama's ranked higher than Indiana in basketball. So yeah, up is down, down is up. It is a strange. The selection committee rankings, when those things come out, and the selection committee rankings, when those things come out, and what all implications we have with the new college football playoff.
Well, I'm just curious, Brett, when you 1,000-foot first time conference that's going on the red on this of getting
and I'm so what you and I can we the losses we can be contest for the 13 folks on the selection committee, and they may or may not agree with that, and that's the big unknown. The biggest factor in the 10-year history of the college football playoff was not strength of schedule, it was not yards per play, it was not winning margin, coaching, pedigree, whatever you want to throw out there. It was one thing: coaching, pedigree, whatever you want to throw out there. It was one thing: who had the fewest losses. And that held true every year except last year when Florida State did not get in, but everyone saw what they looked like without their starting quarterback. So, guys, I don't know what is going to happen when we get to that first Sunday in December. And if they're comparing 11-1 Indiana, which Indiana's had a great season, but they should lose to Ohio State. And then if they win out, they'll be 11-1, no wins against top 25 teams. They lose their only top 25 game against Ohio State. How are they going to compare them against any SEC team that's 9-3, or any Big Ten team that's 9-3 for that matter, that has multiple top 25 losses, and specifically the case of Alabama, will have top 25 wins, and arguably one of the biggest wins, best wins of the year for the resume, beating Georgia. Guys, you ask a great question, and I don't know because I can't predict what those guys are going to do. What they've done in the past is they'll pick the 11-1 team over the 9-3 team. I do know this: if that happens going forward, it's going to impact the future non-conference schedules for every SEC and Big Ten team, because we're not going to see Texas, Michigan play anymore. We're going to see, Texas versus Podunk State, because nobody's going to take a chance to play a high caliber game if you're going to be penalized within the seeding of the college football playoff. So, yeah, that's that's a fascinating part of this whole thing, and we may get a little bit of an indication when the first rankings come out the first week in November. But I can sit here and say what I think they should do, but they may not agree with what I think, what you think, what all the listeners think, and that's what's really going to be frustrating and fascinating, and unfortunately or unfortunately, must see TV to see what happens.
Brett McMurphy, America's College Football Insider, there with the Action Network HQ at Brett_McMurphy on the X. He joins us, as all of our guests do, on the Buyers Right hotline. We've seen uncertainty in past years, but especially here in the SEC, and you just kind of touched on it with, it seems like more uncertainty week in, week out. And I get with the parity, but it's kind of across college football. To me, there is not a clear-cut number one, maybe that grouping, and maybe that grouping is still there with a top tier, even with an expanded college football playoff of 3 or 4 teams that are clearly better than everyone else. But it surprised me the way that it's gone. Have you been surprised? What was your expectation coming into this year based on what we would get?
Well, I made the bold prediction before the year that the winner of the SEC and the winner of the Big Ten would have 2 losses. And I don't think we're going to get there, but I don't think we're going to have any undefeated teams in the power leagues. I think, Oregon's undefeated. They're probably the least likely to lose a game, but I think somehow they slip up. And I think it's a number of factors with the expansion of the Big Ten and the SEC and the networks having a big play in those conference schedules. Look, we're seeing some incredible games. You guys have seen the TV numbers, record ratings for Saturdays on the various networks, because we're having better games. The bell cows from each conference are playing each other. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is these star players that are used to coming out of the games mid-third quarter, early fourth quarter, are now playing deep into the fourth quarter. They're playing more plays. Same number of games, but you're playing more plays. So you're seeing more injuries. We've seen that all throughout college football. Laundry list of injuries for star players in college football. So the portal has kind of helped even out the playing field a little bit, somewhat. And also, but the big thing is these rosters aren't any bigger. So when you lose players to injuries, you lose a star player, you don't have an additional 15 players on your team that you had last year. And so I think the combination of all that is why you're seeing all of these upsets, why you're seeing more of an even playing field. And I agree with you. I don't think there's a dominant team in college football right now. Georgia is this week's flavor of the week. Guess what? Georgia's longest scoring drive on offense against Texas, 35 yards. What's that mean? It means their offense was not that great. Their defense was incredible, but their offense was not that great. Look, this is the same Georgia team that should have lost to Kentucky. It's the same Georgia team that gave up 31 points to Mississippi State. So I'm not slamming Georgia. I'm just saying I don't think there's a great team out there. I think it's going to be who can stay healthy, who plays good at the end of the year, and then a weird twist, which we've never experienced in college football. What are your matchups in the playoffs? Who do you draw in the first round? Do you get a bye? Are you coming off a conference championship loss? I think one thing to keep your eye out on, guys, is who the third place team is in the SEC and the Big Ten, because potentially they will not play championship game, so they'll have that week off. Then they will host a first-round game, and they could play a team coming off an emotional loss in a conference championship game, which could be banged up, which will have one last week of rest. And then they will get to play potentially a rematch against a conference champion. You know how difficult it is to beat the same team twice in 1 year. So, yeah, there's a number of factors in play, but you're dead on. There's no great teams out there. There are a lot of really, really good teams, but you could pick 10 names out of a hat, and I'd say, yeah, okay, yes, I think they can win the national title too. But so could the other 9 names in that hat.
Brett McMurphy joins us from the Action Network. And Brett, no one has been more connected to this college redefining of the landscape than you have with the redevelopment of the Pac-12, what the Mountain West is going through. Can you tell us on this date that are we done with all of this realignment? Do you see down the road where the SEC or the Big Ten says, you know what, the implosion of the ACC, let's go, pluck North Carolina or Clemson or FSU out of that league? Where do you see this going 5 years from now?
We'll be done with the expansion when the SEC has 60 members. and then we'll be done. No, yeah, you answered your own question. I mean, look, the Mountain West are still going to add some teams. They're talking in Northern Illinois, Toledo for football-only stuff, and they'll add some basketball schools. Pac-12 still has to add another football school. They'll probably go after some teams from the American, or maybe try to grab somebody in the Mountain West. Who knows? But as far as the power leagues, you nailed it. We're quiet. Big asterisk here until we see what happens with the ACC and the pending lawsuits with Florida State and Clemson. And when we know when or if these guys can get out of the league and how much it costs to get out, if they're able to get out and it doesn't cost a great deal of money, several, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, grant rights, whatever that number is. But if schools are able to get out of the ACC at a fairly reasonable rate, the realignment musical chair starts all over again. The SEC expands. The Big Ten expands. They go after, you're right, North Carolina and Virginia are the top two targets, not Florida State and Clemson. And that may sound weird to some people, but it's not success on the field. It's what those markets bring to those conferences. North Carolina and Virginia would be sought after by both the Big Ten and the SEC. So this will be a weird time for us. It's the first time. You're right. I've been covering this a long time. It's the first time that I can remember that I think has ever happened that we will have two schools that will be actively sought after by two conferences. So this is going to get really crazy. Maybe we'll make it into a Netflix series or one of these reality shows. But no, you're right. Once this happens, and then once the SEC gets North Carolina, Virginia, the Big Ten gets them or whatever, then Florida State and Clemson will probably go to the other league. And then they'll be at, the Big Ten will be at 20, the SEC will be at 18, and they may want to go to 20. And then when they're done picking and they're done choosing who they want, then the Big 12 will swoop in and they'll get whoever's left, maybe a Pitt, maybe a Louisville, a Virginia Tech if they're still around. And then the Big 12 goes to 20. And then the ACC, whatever's left of the ACC, will merge with the American, and then they'll try to still remain a power conference. Will they be allowed to be a power conference? That's to be seen. I mean, we used to have 5 power conferences. We had 6 power conferences with the Big East. They went away. Then we were Power 5. That lasted for a while. Pac-12 went away. Now we're at Power 4. That'll go for, 5-10 years. And then we'll probably be a Power 3 or we'll go straight to a Power 2. But it's quiet for now, but it's quiet only until the ACC thing gets settled. And if teams are able to get out of the ACC, then that's when you see the SEC and Big Ten expand. I don't think – look, the SEC and the Big Ten, they do not want to expand, okay? But if those schools are available, then they will expand. But if you gave Greg Sankey, heck, you don't even have to give him true serum. If you just asked him, point blank, he would prefer to stay at this number till the end of time. All that will happen. The only other thing that could screw all that up is if Notre Dame ever decides they want to join a conference, and then there's going to be a full court press from the Big Ten and the SEC to get Notre Dame.
He is absolutely the best in the business. Brett McMurphy, College Football Insider, the Action Network HQ. You can follow him on the X at Brett_McMurphy. Brett, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule. Hopefully we'll talk to you down the road.
You got it. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Brett McMurphy joining us as all of our guests do on the Buyers Right hotline for all of your insurance, financial, and HR needs. It's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner. Back-to-back Bretts. This one, he's from the South. Southern gentleman Brett Norsworthy joins us next. 12:34. The hour of Brett continues here on Three Man Front. Brett McMurphy, we just heard from him from the Action Network. Now our favorite time of the week. No disrespect to any other guests that we have, but he is family here on the show. It is Brett Norsworthy, WHBQ fine radio host there in Memphis, but also a part of the Ole Miss Football Radio Network. Mr. Norsworthy, how are you this fine Thursday?
I'm doing great, Landon. That's very kind of both you and Conrad, Miss Pat, Miss Molly. But I appreciate you, and you know how much I adore being with y'all and on the best college football radio station in the country in front of the best college football fans in the country. Y'all's great listeners.
Well, you are so kind to say that, and we have certainly heard from our listeners, and a little bit more than we would expect on the Alabama side as far as negative comments at this point in the season. Let's go back to what happened inside of Neyland Stadium based on what you thought about that game heading in. When we talked to you Thursday, what surprised you in 60 minutes of football between those two teams?
Just how little Alabama could get anything running the ball going, only 75 yards rushing for the game. This year in the SEC, I promise 75% every year on opening day. The team that wins the rushing battle, I promise 75% will win the game involving SEC teams. This year, that rushing number is at 8-14, 66-15 if you win the rushing battle, and Tennessee won it. They won it with their good tailback. They won it with their defense, and they played kind of old school General Neyland, Johnny Majors, Philip Fulmer, Tennessee football. They ran the ball. They rode their defense, and they kept their young quarterback in cozier situations than Jalen Milroe was put in. And it really came down late in the game for the Alabama offense. If Jalen Milroe didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done, and Tennessee knew that, and they defended very well against it. Now Tennessee are like a lot of teams. Alabama's in this. Mizzou Saturday, the Alabama opponent. Ole Miss is in it. Everybody's talking winning out. Well, Andrew, we know mathematically everybody can't.
So, Brett, keeping on with that and keeping on with Alabama, that plays into exactly what I wanted to ask you. So is there anything that you've seen from Alabama, whether it's going back to the early parts of the season or even something in these, I guess, frustrating performances we've had the last couple of weeks? Is there something that stands out to you about Alabama that goes, okay, I think maybe they could turn this thing around and potentially win out like they would need to, as you were just talking about?
Offensive line, right there in the O-line. I'm going to stay with that. I'm surprised it hadn't played better than it has. The Bama offensive line's really only had about 6 good quarters all year, maybe 7. But, up at Wisconsin, played real well, and the first half against Georgia. Outside of that, it's been whipped, and that's surprising because I thought it would be one of the strong suits of the team. In the preseason, if you had told me Bama's going to hold Tennessee to 24 at Rocky Top, I would have guaranteed a win. It might have been 27-24, 28-24, but I thought that would have been enough for Alabama to go to Knoxville and get a win. And now, in front of fans, because remember in 2020, COVID, Bama hadn't won in front of fans at Neyland Stadium since 2018.
Wow. Never really thought about that, but you're exactly right. Brett Norsworthy joining us here on Three Man Front. All of our guests join us on the Buyers Right hotline. Well, quietly, two teams are going to match up, maybe not so quietly anymore, but the LSU Tigers, since losing on the opening weekend to USC in Las Vegas, they've steadily improved. You saw them with your own eyes up close and personal there in Tiger Stadium when they upset Ole Miss. A lot of people pegged them for the upset and going into Reynolds Razorback Stadium in Fayetteville last week, but they handled their business. Now, a lot of folks saying Texas A&M, they're at Kyle Field, they're going to handle their business, but this is so typical of a Brian Kelly coach team, especially with what we saw in the first year of SEC play with him at the helm of LSU. Brett, where do you put this LSU team and the prospects of this team making a run and earning a berth in the college football playoff?
I think they're right back in the mix. I don't think that was I know it's not a great USC team that they lost to. One of the Twitter memes this week is USC into the Big Ten is really Purdue with a beach. And that's kind of what they are. They're not that good, but they're protecting Garrett Nussmeier. The defense has improved under the new defensive coordinator. And one of the central themes of a Brian Kelly team is it gets better week in and week out. If they can avoid injury, this team's going to be in the college football playoff, and we know they will be a really tough out. I don't think it's a great LSU team. We've all seen better LSU teams than this one, but it's a pretty good one, and Brian Kelly is doing a good job with it. And they did almost the same thing that Tennessee did. Run the ball, ride your defense, and run your kicker out there and make 5 field goals and get out of town and win a game. You can win a lot of different ways other than just high-scoring offenses. You can win playing defense and special teams.
Talking with Brett McMurphy, member of the Ole Miss Sports Network here on Jocks 94.5. So wanted to talk to you about the big game in the SEC from last weekend, that, of course, being Texas and Georgia, Brett. And I just kind of wanted to get what your take is now on Texas after that big loss. That was their first big test of the season, obviously, and it did not go very well for Texas. So do you think that maybe they just ran into the buzzsaw that was Georgia last weekend, or is this a team that going into this matchup with Vanderbilt this weekend maybe should be a little concerned?
I think maybe a little concerned. You look at how smart Vanderbilt's playing last week. They had 2 penalties all day, 2 penalties for 10 yards, 2 5-yard penalties all day. And that's what Vanderbilt and Clark Lee, what they have to do. They have to take care of the ball. And Diego Pavia has done a great job with that. They have to control the ball. They have to win the time of possession, kind of play take away, a little rope-a-dope with everybody, and try to steal it at the end like they did against Alabama. And like they did in overtime against Virginia Tech. I think Texas will win, but what scared me about Texas is that in the first half, when they pulled Quinn Ewers and put in Arch, and Arch was okay, but they showed Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers sitting on the bench by each other right before halftime, and they both looked shell-shocked. And I tell all my friends in the Ole Miss world that are talking about winning out, how's Ole Miss going to win out? If Ole Miss could not block the Kentucky defensive front, how are you going to block that Georgia defensive front that just dominated that game and really limited Ewers and Arch to not being able to do very much?
That's a great point. Brett Norsworthy joining us here on 3-Man Front on the Buyers Right Hotline. I want to talk about the game coming up this weekend in Oxford. Early start playing a team that actually they still, at the strength of their team, would be on the defensive side of the ball. We know they have a defensive-minded coach. They've already fired their offensive coordinator. Not saying it sets up exactly like several weeks ago when Ole Miss was a 17.5-point favorite at home to a Kentucky team, but there are some similarities after the bye week for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. Any chance, any angst from you that we see a repeat and Ole Miss comes out and this is a ball game in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, there's a lot of angst for me because really this Ole Miss team, what's kind of the gold star win? Maybe it's South Carolina. I don't think South Carolina is very good. I know they should have beat LSU. They could have beat Alabama. They did win. They did win last week against Oklahoma and really put it on OU. But I don't know how much I really am trusting this offense. Jackson Dart's got some beautiful numbers. You just pop up his touchdown to interception ratio right now, and you think, man, great year. And he has had a good year. But then look at it in the SEC. Only 2 touchdowns in the SEC. And I think the Mark Stoops defensive plan for Kentucky against Ole Miss has really kind of gotten around. And you know what? That's what Venables and the OU defense will try to do. But heavy favorite, almost 20-point favorite. 40 years ago, in 1984, when Barry Switzer had OU rolling, if you would have told me 40 years from now, Oklahoma's going to be in the SEC, and the first time they go to Oxford, they're going to be a 20-point underdog, I would have bet every cent the Federal Reserve prints against that.
Well, Brett, you did just bring up Kentucky, and they're hosting Auburn this weekend, and Auburn's still looking to get their first SEC win of the season. So I'll make it simple for you, Brett. Do you think that Auburn has enough to get it done on the road in Lexington this weekend and get their first conference win of the year?
Oh, Conrad, it's almost like we planned this, and people, we did not. It's never planned. You never know what's going to happen. Not only do I like the simplicity in the question, you're going to love the simplicity in my answer. That's my I ain't scared lock of the week.
Oh, looky there, Brett.
Kentucky and win straight up.
Oh.
So Auburn goes, I'm going to fade Auburn from here on out. I don't care. I'll fade them versus ULM. I've been burned so many times until they finish a game. It's like someone said, Auburn is like snow. Until it happens, I ain't buying into it. So, Brett.
Right. even when Span says it's going to snow, we don't believe it, do we?
No, that's exactly right. Well, some do because you go to the local grocery stores and you see that there's no milk or no bread. Brett,
Isn't that great when that happens?
Oh, it is. It is outstanding.
And I love the reporters live and late breaking on the overpasses.
Yes. When there's nothing coming down and they're talking about just maybe one or two flakes that have fallen in the past 3 hours. That's always fun.
Traffic behind them looks like the Indianapolis 500, and they're telling everybody to be careful driving.
Brett Norsworthy, WHBQ, they're in Memphis. Also, a fine member of the Ole Miss Radio Football Network. Brett, we always appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
It's the time of the week. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the game.
You as well. Brett Norsworthy joining us. All of our guests join us on the Buyers Right Hotline for all of your insurance, financial, and HR needs. It's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner. We open up the phones. We get to the texts. This is all about you. Three-man front as we roll on. Jocks 94.5. 12:53 man front here on this Thursday. Landrum, Conrad, Molly, Pat back with us tomorrow. Had some business he had to take care of. We do have college football tonight. Georgia Southern at Old Dominion. Earlier in the show, it was Old Dominion -1. That line has now moved to a pick'em. Going to get that one at 6 o'clock. Also 6:30, Syracuse at 5-1 in ACC play, taking on Pitt, who is a perfect 6-0, and I believe, Conrad, a perfect 6-0 against the spread this season.
That is correct, Landrum. So that's enticing for a lot of people, but a very interesting game because Syracuse they're pretty good.
They are pretty good. I like them better when they're in their Carrier Dome.
Yes.
And they have to travel to Acrisure Stadium, formerly known as Heinz.
Can you really side with Narduzzi, though?
It's really tough.
I know.
It's tough. But my disdain for Narduzzi does not outweigh
Your
my
wallet?
love of green
Good. That's smart.
in the OFP or when it comes to the LV. Also tonight here on Jocks, 7:15, The Kick, the NFL in primetime. You get Minnesota favored by 3 as they take on the LA Rams. You going to play that one?
Probably not. That's just a tricky game because I know our resident Vanderbilt fan and Vikings fan E. Robinson is not going to be happy with this, but I like the Vikings. I think they're good. They've definitely been one of the best teams so far. But man, there's just something about Sam Darnold. It's hard to trust. And Cooper Kupp coming back for the Rams, probably gonna be a little rusty, but it'll be interesting, though. I have seen some reports today from, NFL reporters saying essentially if the Rams win tonight, expect Cooper Kupp to stay there in LA. They're going to try to rebound, get back into the playoffs. But if they lose to the Vikings tonight, a lot of people expecting that Cooper Kupp will, in fact, be dealt. And there have also been some rumblings about Matthew Stafford. So we will see.
We got the holidays coming up. We have Thanksgiving next week. We have holiday parties all the way through December, the first part of January. What does that mean? Well, that means probably overindulging. I'm not just talking about alcohol for those of you who do partake. I'm talking about food. All of those parties, all of those goodies. It's a festive time, and you want to indulge. It's part of your tradition. I'm sure your family's tradition. But you can go ahead and get a head start. I'm going to tell you a great solution. Mandu in downtown Homewood. Mandu is electrical muscle stimulation fitness. What Mandu is, call it boutique fitness. We want everything that's easy, that's accessible. And this is what Mandu is. It's 15 minutes of your day. Because it's electronic muscle stimulation fitness, that means they're going to put you in a suit. They're going to hook you up to a machine that somebody really, really smart came up with. They're going to send electric pulses to various parts of your body. They're going to put you through a 15-minute workout. And it's not too strenuous. You can go the level of difficulty from very, very easy, beginner, to extremely difficult, depending on what you're wanting to do, whether it's add muscle, build up endurance, maybe just want to feel better. Mandu can help you do that. Your first visit is free, and it's not just a walk around. No, you go through the workout. They put you through that 15-minute workout. I promise you're going to get results. Check them out. All kinds of specials if you sign up now for that first free visit. No obligation after that. Mandu in downtown Homewood. Check them out. Mandu, MANDUU.com. Follow them on Facebook and also on Instagram at Mandu Homewood. Once again, MANDUU.com. That's Mandu in downtown Homewood.
And if you missed the news earlier, the big news today, at least here in our part of the college football world, is the injury reports. We've talked a lot of time today about Alabama and Missouri and how that game's shaping up. And we found out yesterday that Nate Noel, the running back for Missouri, looked like he wouldn't be out, but now we're getting some reports that, maybe pump the brakes on that a little bit. He might be able to go on Saturday, but even bigger than that is the news about Brady Cook, the quarterback of the Missouri Tigers, who last week injured his ankle, then had to go and had to go get an MRI across the street at the hospital, then comes back in the game, ultimately able to pull Missouri through to a win over Auburn, but it looks like he will not be able to play this Saturday as they head to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. So some big news there that does not favor Missouri in that matchup on Saturday.
No, that line has fluctuated. It was at 13.5 now, looking around 17.5. By the time it goes off, it might be 18.5. Just depends on where the betting public is going. We open up the phone lines, 800-239-WJOX. Steve, welcome in. How are you?
Hey, guys. I think that might normally be good news, but we know Alabama, we always give people's best game, and their backup quarterback always has the game of his life against us. So I'm not going to put a lot of hope in Brady Cook being out.
Well, it can't be a lot worse than he was against Auburn last week when he had to play for a little bit.
Well, you're right. Good point. That guy is so funny. Did he say USC is Purdue with a beach?
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
That was a pretty good line.
I thought it was a good line too. I want to go back to the quarterback thing real quickly because I saw this on, I don't know, Bama Hammer or one of those, but whatever. I'm not going to call the guy's name, but I thought he had some really good points. And one of them was that if you looked at who DeBoer is recruited for quarterbacks, so if you look at the profile, et cetera, he's probably not got the guy that he would normally recruit out there. But at the same time, I think that I forget that the coaches are about one thing, and that's winning, and they will give the best opportunity for us to win. They'll play the person that gives us the best opportunity to win. That's Milroe. I don't know if he's got a processing problem. You can't coach speed, but you also can't coach, presence on the field sometimes either as far as processing. So anyway, have a good day.
Steve, you as well. One thing that Kalen DeBoer has had at his disposal in his young head coaching career, Jake Haener at Fresno State, Michael Penix, and now Jalen Milroe. Recipe for success. It all starts at the quarterback position. Another hour, loaded up hour. Stay with us. We continue three-man front and Jocks, 94.5. One o'clock here on three-man front. What a busy Thursday. Landrum, Conrad, Molly, Pat back with us tomorrow. Very busy show here on this Football Thursday, as it typically is. Rodney Orr of Tighter Insider joining us in the 11 o'clock hour. Rob Pate, interesting things he had to say about Auburn and Kentucky and the Tigers moving forward. And then Brett McMurphy of the Action Network College Football Insider joining us in the last hour and covering a big scope of things for this year in college football. But a very interesting thing that he said, especially when it comes to the SEC and it comes to the overall dominance of one team or two teams in college football.
And I agree with you. I don't think there's a dominant team in college football right now. Georgia is this week's flavor of the week. Guess what? Georgia's longest scoring drive on offense against Texas, 35 yards. What's that mean? It means their offense was not that great. Their defense was incredible, but their offense was not that great. Look, this is the same Georgia team that should have lost to Kentucky. It's the same Georgia team that gave up 31 points to Mississippi State. So I'm not slamming Georgia. I'm just saying I don't think there's a great team out there.
And he's so right about it. And you have to be fortunate to make it through a schedule. But let's look at Oregon being that top team right now. And they have a quality win over Ohio State. Is that better than a win over Texas that Georgia had? Well, maybe not, but they're undefeated. But outside of that game, you look at them, taking on a Purdue team that is just terrible, winning by 1 over Ohio State, beating a Michigan State team by 3 touchdowns, not a good UCLA team by 3 touchdowns, a bad Oregon State team, a 3-point win over a very impressive Boise team, and then struggling with Idaho. That's not a team that screams dominance. Now, the rest of their schedule, they get Illinois. Okay, Illinois, that could be interesting if Illinois wants to make it interesting. At Michigan, not going to have a problem there. You get Maryland at home, you're at Wisconsin, and then Washington to close out your schedule. I'm like Brett, I would not be surprised if we saw this Oregon team falter. And then Georgia. It was not a Kirby Smart defense we're accustomed to seeing in the first half versus Alabama. That was not a Georgia team that we expected to get what we got versus Kentucky, the Mississippi State game, and giving up 31 points. It's just the up and down week to week. It's fun to watch as a college football fan, but if you have a rooting interest in one of those teams, it gives you a heart attack.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I think a big, kind of a commonality between a lot of these teams that we would, kind of throw into this conversation of teams that have flash potential of being the best team or one of the best teams in the country, but we still have question marks about them. And I think a lot of it is kind of the quarterback play, honestly, around college football this year. And there's been some spectacular players, like O'Rourke out of Indiana and guys that you just don't really maybe necessarily see coming on a national scene. And then you look at the Carson Becks of the world. And while he's been good at times, he didn't have any interceptions going into the Alabama game. He now has 8. Right? He threw, 3 against Texas this past weekend, 2 against Alabama, had some turnovers against Mississippi State. Dylan Gabriel had a lot of turnover issues earlier in the season. Those have gotten better. I mean, Quinn Ewers got benched last week, right? Like Jalen Milroe has had struggles. Like these are the guys that we had essentially written in pen at the beginning of the year as not only the best quarterbacks in the country, but guys that you expected to probably be in New York at the end of the year for a Heisman Trophy presentation. And they just haven't quite lived up to the billing in a lot of cases. And there's various reasons for that. It's not all on their shoulders, but, I think that's a big part of, this whole kind of discussion is you just had up and down play from some of the best players in the country. And we've seen teams like Oregon struggle, Georgia have a loss, Texas get blown out last weekend, where you just kind of scratch your head and you go, well, what version of this team am I getting any given weekend?
Well, and then you got a team like Penn State. And we know that Penn State, they're not flashy on offense. Their strength was going to be their running game on offense, but also their defense and the guys that they had coming back or coming in. And while the defense has been impressive, they go to USC, and that's a tough road trip, but you win by 3 points. The best team that you have beaten to date would be the Illinois team, and at that time, they were ranked 19th. It's not a team I'm buying stock in. They still have to take on Ohio State, but still potentially we're looking at a Penn State team that's going to finish 11-1 at worst, is the way that the schedule looks to me, and they're going to be in a college football playoff. Are they a legitimate 11-1 or kind of a paper tiger 11-1. I would say the latter. But who else? Miami. We've seen them grab victory from the jaws of defeat a couple of times this season. They've got it set up for them, and it's not their fault. They have to play an ACC schedule, but now they're going and they're taking on in a rivalry game a Florida State team that they're a 3-touchdown favorite over. That Miami team, they're very good on offense, but defense, we saw them getting a shootout last week when there's 100 points scored, almost 97 in a 52-45 win over Louisville. That's not the team that I'm going to push all the chips in on. So it's very entertaining as a college football fan, and maybe just in time for us to get an expanded college football playoff, because to me, it's shaping up to be a lot more entertaining and unpredictable than I had once thought.
Yeah, and that's going to be the interesting thing once we get to postseason play is what kind of, is chalk going to win the day at that point in the season? Or are we going to continue to see upsets or even upsets in these conference title games? And that's where you end up getting your random, 3-loss, even a 4-loss team in the playoff because they got hot and they happen to have an upset in their conference title game. And, you brought up Miami, and I made this comparison earlier in the year, and I stand by it, but I think it applies to other teams as well. You brought up Penn State too, but it just reminds me so much of a 2014 Florida State team that went undefeated, made the college football playoff. They were the defending national champions. But week in and week out, if you watch them play, they did not pass the eye test. They were barely beating inferior opponents. And ultimately, when they actually faced, really good competition in the playoff, they got blown out by Oregon. And I think there's just a lot of teams that kind of fit that mold this year where if they're on, they can potentially beat anybody in the country, but there's also going to be weekends where you question, is this even a top 20 team in the country right now? And that's just, I feel like we haven't had that to this degree in quite some time.
A perfect segue, Conrad, because you mentioned mold. If you see black mold, maybe algae, maybe fungus on your roof when you're up there this fall and you're having to get the leaves out of the gutter, you look at the roof and you say, man, I hadn't been up here in a while, but man, we need a new roof. Not so fast. How about this? Our friends at Roof Max, they have a professional and affordable roof treatment scientifically proven to reduce the aging process of your asphalt roof. This is how it's going to work. Roof Max of Hoover, they resaturate your old, dirty, dry shingles with a natural bio-friendly treatment that's going to give you 5 more years of protection guaranteed. So instead of coming out of pocket on average, $15,000 to $20,000 because insurance isn't paying for it because it was not hit by Mother Nature. You don't want to do that. Pay pennies on the dollar with our friends at Roof Max. Local right here in Hoover, Roof Max of Hoover. Get a free roof assessment today. You're going to get the extended life of your roof. Save that money for something else. Call or text them at 205-913-2243. 913-2243 or 913-CAGE. If that's easier to remember, it is Roof Max of Hoover. Get the discount, get the free roof assessment, and make sure you tell them Landrum from Jocks 94.5 sent you.
For a second there, I thought Lee Corso was doing that read. Not so fast.
Not so fast, my friends. Oh, good old Lee.
It's a nice little nod there.
Well, thank you very much. Let's go to Don. He wants to chat. Don, what's up?
Hey, guys. How's everybody doing today?
We're okay. Hope you are.
I am, buddy. And, hey, great segment with Rob Pate. And when you said that several Auburn fans were saying amen to him, I was in my car shaking my head saying he is right on there. Peyton Thorne's got to quit. Yes, he was exactly right about everything you said, Landrum. And I don't blame you. I would bet against Auburn till they prove you wrong, brother. I would.
That's right, because I hate being wrong. I like to win, and they have burned me several times this year.
Okay, but I got a funny question to ask you. I heard you say this morning that somebody that you look at took Liberty minus the 24.5 last night. That wouldn't by chance be me on the office poll pick for it.
No, it was not you. This is a guy that apparently does this for a living. I don't know how, because the text that I get, he is absolutely atrocious. I've never used one of his picks, and I will actually use his picks if it's a game that I'm interested in and either get reassurance or I'll stay away if I happen to agree with him. But no, it was not you, Don, and that big upset. The 26.5-point favorite, in case you missed it, Liberty falls on the road to Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State's first win over an FBS opponent.
Yeah, but you know what? You got to be happy for them. And I have, when I went over to Savannah, my really good friend's girlfriend, her daughter plays volleyball for Kennesaw State.
Okay.
Have you ever seen their stadium when you're driving through there, Landrum? It is a beautiful little stadium.
I think maybe I have. I do remember seeing their baseball field.
Oh yeah.
And their baseball program has been solid for years, but I don't know if I do recall seeing the football stadium.
Okay. Well, hey, tomorrow when you have your high school gown there, I need you to, if you can remember this, can you and Damien and them on their Friday night show, they talk about this kid every week. Have you heard about that running back besides Alvin Henderson leading the nation? We have somebody else from the local area in the top 5. It's that kid from Dora High School. I believe his last name's Griffin, I believe. Can you ask your high school guy about him tomorrow for me?
I certainly will. When Kyle Parmley joins us for the high school breakdown at 1 o'clock on tomorrow's show, I'll do that, Don, for sure.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I see Miss Molly sitting there, and I think I told y'all the other day that me and a buddy of mine are heading to Biloxi this weekend for a free weekend at Harris. Molly, I believe I'm going to take your picks on Better Than Forget It tomorrow and put a little money on all of them.
Well, I wish you luck, and I hope I go 5-0.
Now, me too, girl. And hey, are you winning? Who's winning that going into tomorrow?
Conrad's still up, but
he's a half a game above me.
It is really close right now. It's too close to call. We might have to have a recount when it's all said and done.
Landrum, I think Molly really is very competitive on this.
She is.
I do.
I wish that she would transfer that to the office football pool.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that.
Because she is.
Hey, Molly, I bet you you're beating me. I had the worst weekend of all time last weekend. I think I was like 5-15. That's why you might want to look at my picks this weekend if you're betting, go the other way.
Well, Don, thank you. Have a safe trip to Biloxi, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Thank y'all.
All right, let's continue with the phone calls. Let's go to Joe. He wants to talk about a game that a lot of people aren't talking about. It's going to happen in Nashville. Joe, welcome in.
Oh, well, you just answered part of my question. The game's in Nashville this week between Texas and Vanderbilt?
That is correct, yes. First Bank Stadium, all 28,000 of it.
First thing, why would there be such a difference in the point spread to when Alabama played them at 20-something as opposed Texas going in there only at, a 14 or 15 right now, I believe?
Is it that low?
I think it's 19.
I think it's 19.
I have it pulled up at 18.5.
Okay, 18 and a half. And that's not that big of a difference. That's around, 3 points difference than where Alabama was at 21 and a half. But I think maybe just more belief in a Vanderbilt team based on what we've seen and some more consistency and based on Texas going on the road and looking like, last week.
And then the second thing is I called y'all right before the season started. And I told y'all that no SEC team was going to go undefeated, and y'all pretty much agreed with that. Can y'all actually see how SEC teams having 2 losses at this point of the year now?
I am so.
And I'll just hang up and listen, guys.
Joe, thank you for listening. Thank you for chiming in. He just brought that up. Coming up next, a scenario that is more realistic than maybe you once thought. We'll lay it out. What could that be? The implications in what has been a wild 2024 college football season. It's 3-man front in America's home for college football. Jocks 94.5. 117 three-man front. We might get it this year because of the way that the American Athletic Conference standings are shaping up. We could get Army and Navy for the American Athletic Championship. And then the following week, we could get Army. Well, we will get Army and Navy again in that traditional weekend where you don't have conference championships. I'm trying to remember if there's one that they share now with that day, but you don't have any other college football. It's kind of a resting period after those championships have wrapped up, and you get Army and Navy, and we can showcase those two service academies. Well, next year doesn't happen very much, but you're going to get Oregon State and Washington State twice in 2025. It's going to be a wild November.
I love it.
Yep, because of the collapse of the Pac-12 and both of them kind of being independents, they got to fill out a schedule. Oregon State's going to host the first game November 1st, and then Washington State will have time to either celebrate or just mull it over for the next 28 days, and then they're going to play again November 29th.
You couldn't have done it in September and then at the end of the year?
No.
Guess not.
Not at all.
Okay.
They don't want to travel that much in November. I don't know why it all worked out that way, but you're going to get Washington State and Oregon State November 1st and November 29th next season.
Can't wait for it.
I know. I can tell.
It's going to be great. But if you're looking for a place to grab some late night bites, why not head over to Twin Peaks and Hoover? Whether you just get hungry late at night or you're running around, maybe taking the kids to sporting events, school events, whatever it may be, and you're tired of stopping for fast food, stop on into Twin Peaks and Hoover, where you don't have to wait for the weekend for late night bites, because each and every day after dark, they will serve up quality scratch food and pour you their wonderful, delicious cocktails each and every day. So come by Twin Peaks and Hoover to experience the best late night in the league today, tomorrow, or any other day of the week there at Twin Peaks and Hoover.
All right. Any other year, guys, I would say shut the front door. There's no way that's happening. But because of the uncertainty that we have gotten this year, not only in college football, but especially the SEC, we just had Joe that called in and he said, what about this potential scenario of standings in SEC play with 8 conference games being played? Check this out. We could potentially have 9 teams that finish 6-2 in the SEC standings. So I'm going to run through these, and this is how it would all work out. And you guys give me on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very likely, 1 being not very likely. I want you guys to score each one of these potential outcomes. Okay? The first one, Bama wins out and they finish 6-2.
Okay. So like on a scale of 1 to 10 of how likely this is?
1 to 5.
1 to
I
5.
could have done 1 to 10, but 1 to 5. 5 meaning great chance it happens. 1, not very likely.
I will give Alabama 3 out of 5.
I was going to go 3.
All right, you guys will go 3. Okay, there's your first one. Georgia then loses to Ole Miss and finishes 6-2.
I'll give that one a 2 out of 5.
I'll go 1.5.
1.5? Okay.
Yeah.
LSU loses to Bama and Vandy after they take care of business this weekend versus Texas A&M.
Ooh, losing to both of them. See, if it was they lose to A&M and Alabama,
That's different.
I'll probably go 2 out of 5 on
2.
that one as well.
Yeah, 2.
And the reason we couldn't do that is because A&M loses to LSU and to Texas and finishes 6-2.
Now that one I think is I'll give that one a 4 out of 5.
I'll say 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I think that one's likely.
All right, how about this? Tennessee loses to Georgia, wins the rest of their games, and finishes 6-2.
5 out of 5.
Yeah, that's a 5.
Okay. Texas loses to Vandy on Saturday and finishes 6-2.
You know what? I'll go 2.5 out of 5.
I like 2.5.
I'll make that a coin flip.
Just I can't see it happening twice in 1 year.
I can't
One-
either.
one- I'll go 1.5.
Awesome.
It would be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Vandy loses to Tennessee and finishes 6-2.
They beat Texas and lose to Tennessee.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Well, both of them 1 out of 5.
But how wild would that be?
That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
But that's 9 teams finishing 6-2, and I don't know how the equation works out with more than a handful.
I'm glad they put out the 8-step tiebreaker or whatever it was, because they might need
Maybe
it.
that's why it took so long.
I want the random draw.
The random draw?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was the last one, isn't it?
Yeah, just pick 2 names out of a hat.
We could do like a Powerball with a ping pong ball.
Yes, that'd be awesome.
That'd be fun, and that's made for TV, and you put it on the SEC network.
Oh, I would tune in.
Or heck, go primetime. Like break up Dancing with the Stars. Is that still on?
Of course it's still on.
Okay, well you push that, and you have a 30-minute special on the tiebreaker drawing thingamajig.
Will the dancers have to pick the names?
Yes, all
It's
the
like a
dancers.
tie-in?
We will include the dancers in this.
Perfect.
But no, it kind of sums up what we've been talking about since the top of the hour, and just the uncertainty of college football, parity coming into it. But now the perfect time, at least this year, it seems, for a college football playoff, because to me, there is not that clear-cut team. It's not Georgia. I've seen flaws from Georgia. I've seen warts. It's certainly not Texas after what I saw last week. I thought Texas was the most complete team prior to last Saturday.
Oh, I agree with that, because, and I mean, you look at, you bring up Georgia. Okay, they've done a lot of really good things, but then you go back to, as bad as this Alabama team's looked at times over the last 3 weeks, they've still found a way to beat that Georgia team. And it's just, there's every, again, the transitive property that people love to bring up. You can make some sort of wacky combination for pretty much any team in the country in terms of common opponents and who they've beaten or who they've lost to. And it's just, it is wild. And I mean, I love it. I think it's great for the sport. I'm glad that we have this kind of parity, and it really does feel up in the air, because for so long, granted, I mean, I think we know that a Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon and Texas, somebody like that's probably going to end up winning it all. But to at least feel like there is the possibility of more chaos and more upsets, even once you get to the postseason, is really exciting. Because, I mean, let's be honest, for most of the years of the 4-team playoff, you probably looked at 2 or 3 of those teams and went, okay, I could see them winning it all. But there was almost always at least one odd man out. And now this year, everybody almost seems like they could be the odd man out just based on who shows up on any given Saturday.
Go ahead.
So speaking of parity and chaos, when was the last time y'all looked at the SEC media predictions from the beginning of the season?
It's been a while since I took a gander.
Well, the before and after into now, leading into week 9.
Refresh us.
So I will refresh you. So this is the media vote from SEC Media Days. Number 1 was Georgia. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Alabama. Number 4, Ole Miss. That's your top 4.
Okay.
LSU 5, Missouri 6, Tennessee 7, Oklahoma 8.
Yeah, that was the big mess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I never bought into Oklahoma. I bought in their defense, but I thought that Jackson Arnold, unproven, losing Levy, they were going to struggle on that side of the ball. I did not realize they were going to struggle that mightily.
Yes,
and I also did not predict that they were going to lose 30 guys to season-ending injuries.
Right. So the bottom half, number 9, A&M, number 10, Auburn, number 11, Kentucky, 12, Florida, 13, South Carolina, 14, Arkansas, 15, Mississippi State, and 16, the Vanderbilt Commodores.
It's not even half the conference. It's top to bottom.
Really? Yeah. It's everywhere.
From Vanderbilt to, okay, what is Florida doing now? To even a South Carolina, what? Wait.
A&M?
They're going to win more than one game in the SEC. Texas A&M, obviously.
Even Arkansas.
Arkansas for sure. Now, they took a step back last week, came back to reality a little bit. But you want to talk about a scramble and just uncertainty when it comes now still with so many games left to be played with an expanded SEC. Never seen it like this. Now, we've never had 18 teams, but I think that even without Texas and Oklahoma being involved, it still would be a wild, wild year in the SEC with just 16 teams. And that's not just this conference. I don't know how many people had BYU being at 7-0 this year.
Or Iowa State.
Iowa State, another classic example. Indiana, and that story has been incredible. And yeah, their schedule hasn't been great, but the fact that they're just beating the crap out of everybody that they play.
Guilty.
Yes. And now hitting their stride.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got your quarterback who's out, who just had the finger surgery in Rourke. Taven Jackson, though, I'd forgotten by the way, that Taven Jackson started his career at Tennessee. That was his first year was spent at Tennessee. I think he was 3 or 4 passing. But he actually came in when he had to last week, and that thing was rolling. Signetti has done a wonderful job.
He has.
Notre Dame, I hope that they get exposed. They got exposed a little bit by NIU earlier in the season, but they still have 2 Service Academy games. They're a 12-point favorite. That's going to be GMAC's game. They're in East Rutherford coming up this weekend. But that Navy team it's not going to be a pushover at all. And what they do on the offensive side of the ball, they've not been great against the run, and that's what Notre Dame likes to do. But I'll go ahead and tell you guys, I love Navy. I like Navy plus the points until I'm proven wrong. The same with Army. They still got to take on an Army team. Those 2 teams being undefeated as it stands. Tennessee. Do we get Tennessee last week versus Alabama? Or do we get Tennessee in what we saw against Arkansas? Who knows? Or against Florida in a game that many people thought Miami, the close wins, and they keep winning. That's not taking anything away. Ohio State, I've seen it too many times. Now, we've already seen it once, and that was a hard-fought game. They took on Oregon and lost. But how many times have we seen Ohio State throw up on themselves? USC with or Purdue is USC with a beach, or USC is Purdue with a beach, whatever Brett said. He said it a lot better than I did. But I remember that when Ohio State had everything out in front of them, and how many times have we seen them just fumble it away? It's crazy to think that while people thought it was going to be watered down, it was going to diminish the regular season. Oh, no, not this year. It's enhanced it. You possibly got an elimination game at Kyle Field. Every game from here on out for Alabama is an elimination game. I don't know if we all put that in perspective and we thought everything would just be status quo moving forward, and you just get 8 more teams in, and that's a throwaway 8 teams. They don't have a shot at a national title. Wrong. I think a lot of them do this season. Let's go to Dave. He's in Hoover. Dave, welcome in.
Well, since we're paying these student athletes as professionals now, we just need to go ahead and go to the NFL model. So let's take the East-West division winners and the SEC, go back to divisions. They both get in automatically. Same with the Big Ten. Same with the ACC. Then you take probably 1 from the Pac-2, and then you take only 1 from the Big 12. Then you got 4 at large, or 4 wild cards from there. They're going to get to a point. I guess they honestly thought that maybe, we're always going to have somebody undefeated, a couple of teams, 1 team with a loss, wouldn't be a problem. But they're going to continue to cannibalize themselves, and they're going to get down to, okay, well, who had disciplinary actions? Oh, Texas, you're out. You threw shit on the football field, so you don't make the tiebreaker. You're out.
Thank you for the phone call, Dave. We appreciate it. Always appreciate your interaction. 800-239-WJOX. Plenty of time left here on a busy Thursday. Where some of the sharp money is going this college football and NFL weekend. We'll do that next. 3-Man Front and Jocks 94.5.
1:34 here on your Thursday afternoon. Appreciate you tuning in to Three Man Front here on Jocks 94.5. Conrad Landrum and Molly with you until 2 o'clock when we hand you off to the Paul Feinbaum Show. Pat Smith will be back with us tomorrow. And we have had such a great day here on Three Man Front. A number of great interviews. If you missed any of our conversations with Rodney Orr, Rob Pate, Brett McMurphy, Brett Norsworthy, you can catch those at the Jocks podcast section on jocksfm.com. But we keep the hits rolling for you with our great streak of guests today. And now we are joined by our friend Kevin Todd. And Kevin Todd is with VegasMistake.com. He has done an excellent job for us so far this year. And right now, before we get to the picks from Kevin, we want to let you know that right now you can take advantage of a special offer they have just for you. Right now, 5 games this week for just $55, and they guarantee you a winning week, or they're going to give you the service free through the Thanksgiving holiday. So with that, let's bring him in. Kevin, how are you doing on this Thursday?
Great, and that's exactly right, folks. I have 5 games this week that I absolutely love, and I'm doing 5 for 55. If I don't show you a profit, I'm going to give you all my selections all the way till Thanksgiving, absolutely free on me. It's simple, folks. You go to VegasMistake.com, you sign up, or you can give me a call at 866-441-2711. What we do here, folks, is we find the mistakes that Vegas made, whether it's a dog getting a points or a favorite getting value, because the way these odds makers set the line, and you have to believe me, folks, it's the public perception, because the public bets on how teams played the previous week, and you can't do that. So the odds makers already know what the public is going to bet, and then we take advantage of those lines because we believe the mistakes are being made because of the public. That being said, let me give you guys my first pick today that I like in the NFL, in my opinion. Now, if you watch this game on Monday night, Tampa suffered more than a 41-31 loss. They lost their wide receiver, Godwin. They lost their wide receiver with Mike Evans. This team is hurting. Now, if you remember, these two people played, I believe, these two teams played about 2 or 3 weeks ago where Atlanta won in overtime, where pretty much Tampa dominated that game. If it wasn't for a couple of bad calls, Tampa probably could have won that game, but listen, this is not the same Tampa team. I know they're playing at home. This is where Atlanta can take advantage of the injuries that Tampa have and start pulling away of the teams in their division, because they're in one of the weakest divisions in football. And let me tell you right now, Tampa Bay, they're 1-6 at home off a home game, and they're 1-5 against the spread. Their last 6 against the division playing at home. I like Atlanta a lot in this matchup. They're only laying 2.5. They could win this game by at least a field goal or more. Give me Atlanta over here against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Kevin, that's going to be a great NFC South showdown coming up this weekend. We also have some games that I know you feel really good about in the college ranks. So we'll start off with a Big 12 matchup where you have an undefeated BYU teams trying to keep themselves in the mix for a conference title as well as a spot in the college football playoff, going up against a UCF team that had a pretty good start to the year, Kevin, but as of late not looking so great. So how are you feeling about this game between BYU and UCF coming up this weekend?
Well, you're going to call me crazy. What happens if I told you, in my opinion, I absolutely love UCF in this matchup? So let me tell you a few reasons why. One of the main reasons why, gentlemen, this is what you call in Vegas a reverse line movement. So let me make it short and sweet and teach you what that is. A reverse line movement is when you have basically more than 70% of the money going on one team, and the odds makers, they don't respect you, and they're moving the line against it. Right now, the entire public is betting BYU like it's stealing. They went from -2 to +2. I love UCF in this matchup. Now, if you remember, this was the kind of same matchup during the COVID where BYU traveled and they lost that game. And the fact of the matter is, let me tell you right now, this is the clincher, though, guys. UCF is 13-4 against the spread versus undefeated opponents at home, and they're 5-0 against the spread as single-digit favorites. Guys, I'm telling you, they're laying the 2. I love UCF in this game. They're going to win this game by at least a touchdown or more over BYU. Call me crazy, but UCF is winning this game.
Well, I'll tell you who won't call you crazy about that one, Kevin. That's Gus Malzahn. He loves to hear that kind of stuff about his UCF Knights there in Orlando. All right, let's get to a game that I know a lot of people here in our listening audience are very excited for this weekend. Of course, that is Missouri heading down to Tuscaloosa to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Missouri, a close win over Auburn last weekend. Alabama losing on the road to Tennessee. So, Kevin, how are you feeling about this game, and are Alabama fans going to have a reason to be excited on Saturday afternoon?
Well, I don't want to say that they're losing because Coach Saban's not there, because he still has the same talent if he was coaching or he's not coaching. I really don't know what's going on with this Alabama team. They seem to find ways to beat themselves. You know, you always say to yourself, bad teams find ways to lose, but I believe Alabama's a good team and they find ways to lose. They're not basically using the quarterback the way they should use that quarterback. In my opinion, he reminds me of a Lamar Jackson, where you can sit there, if it's not open, you run. But he seems to be more like he wants to be a pocket passer for whatever reason, I don't know. If he would just do a little bit more running and maybe a little less passing, they might not have any loss this year. They're playing a Missouri team. In my opinion, listen, guys, this team is overrated. They went on the road and they got pummeled by Texas A&M, if you remember that, about 2 weeks. And they played an Auburn team. Listen, they're not very good as well. Auburn's been struggling, and they barely got by there. I think the line opened up here at 13.5. I'm not going to say that the coach from Alabama is being out-coached, but he did get out-coached in that Georgia game when they came off to a red-hot start. If they come out like they played against Georgia and take this Missouri team seriously, they could win this game by 4 touchdowns. I'm going to hope they do it like that. I'm going to lay the 13.5 here with Alabama.
Well, Kevin, you just made a lot of our listeners very, very happy. So hopefully it's a great weekend for our listeners and a great weekend for you as well, Kevin. Always appreciate you joining us here and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to remind everybody, listen, folks, I got my 5 for 55. If I don't show you a profit this weekend, you get all my picks through Thanksgiving absolutely free. All you need to do is go to vegasmistake.com. I'm telling you, folks, I love 5 games this weekend. In fact, 4 of them are dogs, and I believe they're going to win the game outright. Go to vegasmistake.com or give me a call at 866-441-2711. Gentlemen, thanks. I'll speak to you next week.
Sounds good, Kevin. Looking forward to it. That is Kevin Todd from vegasmistake.com telling us where the sharp money is going this weekend in college football as well as the NFL. Well, when we come back here on Three Man Front, we'll get you ready for the Paul Feinbaum Show, and we have another edition of The Worst Thing That I've Seen, and this one is a little scary and a little funny. So we'll share that with you next when we return right here on Three Man Front. You're listening to Jocks 94.5.
146 three-man front on this Thursday. It's been a busy Thursday. Rodney Orr, Rob Pate, Brett McMurphy, Brett Norsworthy, all of that found at JocksFM.com, the Jocks 94.5 app, and the Three-Man Front Daily Podcast. You can also view us on Jocks TV. Just search YouTube, Jocks 945, and we will appear. You can also get that via the app and take us wherever you go throughout your college football travels and beyond. Before we get to the worst thing I've seen, Katie does want to comment on Kennesaw State. Katie, welcome into Three-Man Front.
Hey, thank you so much for putting me on. I just want to give a huge shout out to my son-in-law, Seaburn Hines. He's a Helena kid. It's his senior year, and it's a tough year playing football because they went up a division, but they weren't supposed to win one, and they won one. So shout out to my son-in-law, Seaburn Hines.
And spell his name for me?
Seaburn, Seaburn.
Okay. Seaburn Hines. I was just trying to look him up on the Kennesaw roster.
Number 55.
That is awesome. Well, if you talk to him, tell him.
He has played football forever through Helena and then went to Georgia Southern and then ended up in Kennesaw, and it's his senior year. So we were so excited last night that they actually won because it wasn't looking good.
Hey, I'm gonna be honest with you. I have been to Statesboro, Georgia. That seems like an ideal place to go to school if you want to have fun. Has he described the difference in the two campuses?
Oh, yes. He loves Kennesaw. I mean, he got married to my daughter. They both live over there in Marietta and Kennesaw. And, yeah, absolutely love it. I mean, they treat him like, yeah, it was a great move for sure.
Okay. Well, Katie, thank you for sharing that.
Came, they went up the division and they were losing. But, hey, we won.
Yeah, and what a win that was over previously unbeaten Liberty. Nobody saw that one coming. Katie, thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for chiming in. We see good, and that was good. A story like that with a guy being rewarded for sticking it out, playing his senior year, and getting a win over a heavily favored opponent. But we also see bad. For that, we turn to Conrad. This is the worst thing that I've seen.
This is the worst thing I've seen.
Been in quarantine and I need to get out and party. Woo! What's better than beach and a few drinks and Jeeps? Man, getting better than that. Law enforcement's definitely made their visitability and made people chill out and not be as crazy. The cops are doing their job as long as they don't be mean to people who are actually being innocent. Then I'm all gravy, baby.
My comment to Katie about Statesboro versus Kennesaw State. I don't know what campus life is like. If you are already married, then probably Statesboro doesn't have the appeal that it would if you were single and potentially looking for
Oh, is that the only way people have
friends.
fun?
No. No, I'm just trying to put myself into 21, 22-year-old Joe and Jane. College life.
Never mind.
Get to some bad news.
Yeah, what you got?
Yeah. All right. So for the worst thing that I've seen today, we are going to go overseas. We are going to go to Warsaw, Poland.
Ooh.
Let me preface this by saying this is sad. I'm going to laugh. So if you think that makes me a horrible person, that's fine. But it's kind of hard not to laugh at this.
At least you prefaced
At least a little bit. All right. So we are going to Poland, where over the weekend, a funeral home in Poland had to issue an unusual apology after they were transporting a corpse from the funeral home, I'm assuming to the burial site, and the body fell out of the hearse.
No.
On the interstate.
Oh no.
Still in casket?
Yeah. So I actually believe he fell out of the casket.
Oh, no.
So according to the Polish media, they reported that a man was driving down the road on Friday in a city in southeast Poland when he saw a sheet on his car window. After the sheet slid down, he noticed that there was a body lying in the middle of the road. For a moment, the driver was worried that he had hit somebody and left them to be laying in the road. But fortunately for him, and I guess unfortunately for the deceased, he was already dead. So it was a case where the body had fallen out of the hearse, not that he had hit
If you're
somebody.
driving the hearse, don't you get out and you look at the driver who thought he did it and go, look what you've done?
Yes. And so I have not found the image, or well, I just haven't gone and looked for it because I don't really care to see it. But apparently local media published an image that went viral over there in Poland of the deceased lying on the sheet in the middle of the road. So the company or the funeral home is known as Hades Funeral Services. That's a very ironic name.
Wow,
How do you spell it?
Hades, like hell.
Okay.
Like hell. Like
okay.
that Hades. I'm sorry, that's just such an ironic name for a funeral home. But it says that the company transporting the body, which was Hades Funeral Service, issued a statement on Saturday taking full responsibility for the incident and blaming the problem on a technical issue with the hearse, saying, quote, "It is with deep regret that we inform you that as a result of an unexpected technical failure of the electronic tailgate lock inside of the hearse, while transporting the body of the deceased, an unfortunate event occurred which does not reflect the high standards of our company, our deep empathy towards the families of the deceased, and the respect that we always show to the deceased," end quote.
That is so sad.
That is.
I feel terrible for that family.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Is
Yeah.
I feel really, really bad for the family. Have by any chance have either of you ever seen the show I Think You Should Leave on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay, well there is it's like a sketch comedy show. It's very entertaining. I highly recommend it. If you like kind of off the wall humor, but they do a parody in that show. I don't know if you remember it, Molly, of it's a reality show called Coffin Flop. And it's essentially a reality show of people.
See, my favorite one
falling
is
out
like
of
the
coffins.
Bachelor spoof.
Yeah, that one's
That
good.
one, the zip line.
Yeah, the zip line
That's
one.
my
That
favorite one.
is very good. But yeah, very unfortunate for the family in Poland. So hopefully they were able to, I guess, make light of the situation, and they were able to continue on with the burial service and everything, and able to mourn. But it's that's, you don't hear that one every day.
No.
You don't.
I'll just
but
leave it at that.
apparently this happens more than you would think it does, because I'm going back to a story from 2021. A Massachusetts family whose loved one's casket fell open as it was being lowered into the grave, causing the body to fall out. They sued the funeral home and the cemetery. But
That's so sad too.
coming out of the casket, out of the hearse while traveling down the highway,
That's terrible.
interstate, that's
Truly.
really tough. And how traumatic for the drivers behind the hearse.
Oh, well, that's what,
Mm-hmm.
the poor guy who thought that he had hit somebody and potentially killed them. And, luckily that was not the case for him. But still, I mean, I wouldn't sleep well that night. I'll tell you that much.
What are you asking for if that's your loved one?
Oh, in my lawsuit?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Emotional damages? You could probably crank that number up a good bit. How much well, I don't know. Actually, I know that funerals are incredibly expensive.
Was the body able to stay intact?
Well, see, that's my thing is hopefully there were maybe some. Do you still bruise when you're.
I want to know.
Like, I don't know how that
the
works.
technical malfunctions that happened.
Well, it was the lock on the back of the hearse. But yeah, I don't. It's like a fuse out in the car, and
I'm saying driver was texting.
do they have like a button in a? I don't know. I guess it is like a normal car. You have like a trunk button that you could accidentally hit, and it.
I don't know. There's one that comes and parks behind our building time to time.
That is.
You seen that one?
Yeah, that
First
is
time that happened.
Very
Whew.
weird.
Creep you out in the
at
middle of the show.
times. Yeah, so that's the worst thing that I've seen from Warsaw, Poland. Hopefully the family everything's all right now.
Wow.
That is so sad.
We do have
It is
text
very
coming
sad,
in.
but I mean, come on.
205-834-9450. Austin says the straps broke when they were lowering my Meemaw
Oh, that's
and the casket fell in. Sorry, Austin.
That is terrible.
yeah. That especially like right in that moment,
I
I feel like that's probably the
know.
worst. Because at least in this scenario, I'm hoping. I understand normally, you have the hearse in the front and the family follows behind. So I'm hoping you didn't have the family driving behind and seeing that.
Joseph asked the question on the text line going back to just chaos. What if a team loses all 4 non-conference games, then 7-1 in conference, wins the conference championship, then an 8-5 team is going to be a 4 seed. How can anyone justify that?
Correct. Well, also worth mentioning that in that scenario, something that maybe it'll happen this year, it's the 4 highest ranked group of or conference champions, excuse me. So in that scenario, you would likely have a group of 5 team that was ranked ahead of them, and then they would get the 4th bye, so to speak. So you would have an 8-5 conference champion in the playoff, but they would be the 12 seed most likely.
This one coming from Scott from Long Island. Thanks for listening on the Jocks 94.5 app. Good afternoon, guys and Molly. Great show as usual. Bama coach Caleb Dubose is already getting a little thin-skinned. His radio show only took one suck-up call from Pee Wee from Greenville last night. No other questions from other fans with real concerns about the team's performance.
Yeah, I saw that. I can understand what that would be frustrating for a fan base that has probably a lot of things that they would like to get off of their chest. At the same time, I think we all know there's nothing he can say that's going to make you feel better, right?
Finally,
Right.
this last one. 3 things that have screwed up college football. NIL, transfer portal, Nick Saban.
Oh, I thought he was going to go ice cream trucks after practice.
And music.
Music.
And no collars
And
on the
nail
shirt.
polish.
Yeah, that one too. Speaking of Paul, he's next.